A man approaches a girl and asks her to play. He tells her to do what he tells her to do. Father tells Ellie not to answer, just listen to him, and then asks if she understands. The little girl clenches her hands into fists and answers that she understands him. The main character's name is Ellie, and she thinks she's a living doll, and her goal in life is to do what she's told, and that's why she forgot how to speak. The girl is illiterate, and her family always nudges her. The mother, screaming, asks her daughter why she doesn't understand her what she told her. The girl replies that it is a secret, but she still won't be able to tell anyone. The father claims that being mute has its advantages. The main character is a mute doll, Ellie, who can do nothing but listen silently. The girl met 3 men in her life who trusted her. Lennon was fascinated by puzzles and riddles, and he had black hair and scarlet eyes. The Labrador had some piquant hobbies that are not usually talked about. Hayden was blonde and had sea-green eyes, and he liked men. The main character became the savior of their souls, but her own soul turned into a cesspool because of this. Ellie didn't understand how she could get out of this hell, because she understood that she couldn't live like this any longer, and she had to say goodbye to the mute commoner Ellie. The main character now? Countess Wu, who has everything. Status and money. The guy turns to the girl and asks if she is Ellie. The Countess replies that he, sir, is mistaken. And then she turns around and says that her name is Countess Fèvre. And at that moment, she thought that the mute Ellie he knew was dead. The main character remembered that Ellie is just a doll, and her purpose is to listen, not to speak. She was not born like that and could speak until she started playing one game. The father asks his daughter if she wants to play, and when she was 5 years old, her father suggested that she play a simple game. The little girl looked at her father and agreed. He says that there are rules, and she must follow them from now on. Just listen to what he says, but keep quiet herself. And then he asks if it is difficult for her. The man took the girl by the hands and said that now she should keep her mouth shut and listen. The father, screaming, says that this bastard baron has humiliated him again, and he swears that if he didn't have this damned family, he would have quit long ago. And screaming, he says that he hates them all. The father of a little girl, the baron's secretary. But this is only by title, and the honorary position, in fact, he performs the role of a servant. At the end of the working day, the baron threw 5 silver coins on the ground, and then praised him, and said that he was a good boy. At this point, the man felt insulted, and quietly said that they were damned rogues. The father, screaming, tells his daughter that she must respect others, and not follow a bad example, and then asks how much longer she will terrorize him. At this time, the main character thought that she should not be afraid because she believed that this was just a game. Dad sighed with relief and said that he felt better. And then he praised the girl and said that she was a good girl because she sat quietly and listened to him until the end. Ellie turns to her father and thanks him, but he reminds her that he told her to keep quiet. The girl claims that they have already played and asks if that is true. The man claims that silence is a talent and she should develop it. And he suggests that from now on, she should try to talk less because he will never stop. And he believes that one could say that she was born for this. So the game continued, and time passed, but it still did not end. Her sister and mother also played it with her. The mother told her daughter that she has one man and she loves him, not her father, and that's why she has been thinking about committing suicide for a long time. Just as family members are supposed to confide their secrets to the bride, Ellie's relatives got carried away with this and expressed all their grievances, secrets, and grief to her. And at some point, she realized that she had forgotten how to speak. The main character thought that she no longer knew how to speak. And at first, she was overcome with despair, but she also felt proud. And her father was now proud of her achievement, that she had become mute. And he believed that this was such a happiness that she could not even imagine. Ellie got used to her lack of speech very quickly. Although she considers it a flaw, at least she could write and read. Everyone called the girl Mute Ellie, and they needed her to express their emotions. One day, when she was 17, her father offered her something new. He told Ellie to show her talent to everyone and satisfy them. At this time, the main character thought that she was just a mute girl who could not reveal other people's secrets. And she had been doing this since childhood, and this is the only thing she can do. The girl thought that if she tried to refuse her father, the head of the family, he would sell her into slavery. One day, daughter heard from her father that her mother still thought that her 3rd child had died of poisoning. But if you put it that way, He had sold him to slave traders. Dad asks if she remembers him screaming. Then she reports that he could make these piercing, maddening sounds for hours. The man explains that he made this decision because they would not be able to afford a third child anyway, and that child would live in poverty with them. He assumes that the son will grow up in a rich house with the lords and will always be well-fed and clothed. The father explains that it was hard for him to do this, and it is not easy for him to sell his own child, and asks if she understands. And then he starts to cry. The girl understood that if she ceased to be useful to him, he would sell her into slavery, and what she could do, she only obeyed. Ellie had to listen silently to someone's sorrows, someone not from her family this time, and so that she would not see these people. Her eyes were blindfolded, and since they paid decent money for this service, and her father can pay off his debts, the main character became interested in who he was, who needed her silence, since she had not left the house for a long time. Her father never wanted her to leave the house. The sister offers to wash the dishes for her because she is worried. And the whole family felt guilty before her, and she was exempted from any work, and so the main character could only look out the window. And sometimes she went out to take care of the flowers. When her father saw her in the yard, he screamed and asked how many times he told her not to step out of the house. And then he took the girl and pushed her inside the house. At this time, Ellie does not understand why he does not want to let her go, and this happened many times, but she could not resist her father. Sitting in the carriage, the girl thought that they had already arrived, but her eyes were closed and she could not see anything. Someone gave the lady a hand, and she realized that she was being helped out of the carriage. But she felt that the hand was soft, and thought that this was not the same person as last time, and she supposes that it could even be a woman. The girl kept walking and became curious about where they were taking her, but she heard a voice asking if she was comfortable. The lady realized that it was a man's voice, and his hand was so gentle, and so it seemed to her that it was a woman. The main character felt someone touching her, and then realized that the blindfold was being removed. The man says that he will help her. Ellie saw a guy with blonde hair, and his eyes were the color of the sea wave. He says that his name is Hayden and offers the girl to sit down. The girl looked at him and thought that he was very handsome, and that he was probably an aristocrat, and they were alone in the room. Ellie looked at the guy and didn't understand what was going on because he had a gloomy look. Hayden says, "Before we get down to business, he wants to ask you something." The guy says he was told she was mute and couldn't write, and so he wants to know if it's true. Hearing this, the main character thought that she can write, but with difficulty. But she understands that he alone does not need to know about it. The gentleman says that he and her father signed a contract, and so he sympathizes with her and suggests that she remember that this secret should never be known to anyone. Hayden says he thinks it's only fair that he tell her more about this pact. Then he tells her that if she tells anyone what he told her, she'll die, because he'll know for sure that she was the one who blabbed, because no one else knows. The main character looked at the guy and thought that he could kill her, because she thinks that's how it sounds from his words. And looking at his gaze, she realized that he had already killed. The young gentleman asks Ellie if she has already understood everything. And at that time, she thought that everyone has secrets, and it doesn't matter if it's a handsome young man or a wrinkled old man. After all, there will definitely be secrets, no matter how many there are. And the main character believes that the more terrible the secret, the more the desire to see it grows. And she believes that apparently this is his problem. Hayden says he'll get to the confession, and then reveals that he thinks he's attracted to men and he likes men. The young gentleman says that he saw his deepest secret of a stranger, and he does not know if she thinks that he is strange. He thinks that if he did not tell someone this secret, then it seemed to him that he would simply perish. Therefore his heart was breaking with the desire to speak out. I heard that the main character felt sympathy for him at that time, and she didn't condemn him for being homosexual. She was just sad to see a lonely man. Ellie realizes that she is just a listener, and she is not surprised, and cannot do anything. The girl remembers that this is all from her past. After all, her father constantly scolded her for trying to support and console him. One day, Dad grabbed her by the shoulders and screaming asked who needed her worthless words of support. After this, the girl realized that people trusted her with their secrets, not so that she could console them, but simply to lift the weight off their hearts onto her. From then on, the main character no longer expressed her own feelings or tried to console others. Hayden says that he was so hurt that he thought about committing suicide more than once. But one day, he heard about her from Ellie's father, who assured him that his daughter was so smart that she could listen to any secrets and not tell anyone about it. At this time, the main character realized that her father was talking about her ability in front of such high-ranking gentlemen. The young master says that since she is from the rabble, this gives him even more confidence. After all, rumors from the nobility spread like wildfire. But the fact is that they will not listen to a commoner, and they will not believe her, even if she tries to tell. Hayden says he doesn't blame her if she thinks he's a coward because he is. At that moment, the girl thinks she doesn't. The young gentleman thanks the lady and says he will tell her more. Then he tells her that for the first time, he realized that there was something wrong with his attraction. 5 years ago, when Hayden was riding horses with his comrades, he felt when he looked at the guy in white jockey pants, and he was so excited that it clouded his mind, and his body was burning with fire, and at the same time, he was paralyzed by shame. The young gentleman says that from that moment on, he realized that he was attracted to men, and every time he saw an attractive man, he felt lust and hated himself for it. The guy says he tried to have relationships with girls, but over time it became obvious that he only liked men, and then he claims that he tried to change. The aristocrat says that he is the second eldest in the family, and his father demands that he compete with his brother and be better, because only then can he become the head of the family. And until then, his reputation must be as pure as a mountain stream. Hayden says he's fallen in love, and then puts his hand over his heart and says that love is like a whirlpool, and he looks at this guy and feels like he's his prisoner, and he thinks that this love is like his fate. The young gentleman asks what he should do. At this time, the main character looks at him and is silent and does not even move or show any emotions. Ellie realizes that she can only look at him and can't help him in any way. The main character doesn't understand what love is, and she wonders what it's like to have feelings for someone. But there were times when she thought her hellish life had gotten better. The girl understands that there was never love in her family, but sometimes she resigned herself and tried to just live like the mute Ellie and be happy. However, the main character started talking again and started meeting people because she just wants to be like everyone else. Suddenly, the father grabbed the girl by the shoulders and said that today's gentleman praised her and therefore wants to see her again tomorrow. And what's more, today another high gentleman is interested in her. Father says that many men dream of meeting her. The main character came to Hayden the next day. He offered her to sit down and then said that he had been suffering from insomnia for several years. But because he was able to expose his soul to her, Ellie will finally be able to sleep peacefully. The aristocrat says that he himself was surprised at the peace the soul finds when telling a secret, and that is why he really needed a person like her. But he understands that it is almost impossible to find one himself. The young gentleman says that at times his love for him ate him up inside, but even so, he would give anything to kiss him just once more, and so he desires it more and more every day. Hayden asks if this is hypocrisy, and then says that he hates his wrong attraction, but he knows he needs the kiss of the one he feels. The guy asks Ellie if she's ever been kissed. The girl shakes her head. He asks if she wants to kiss him. Then she says yes. Of course, with consent. The young gentleman says that his problems would be solved if he only learned to love women. The guy says that he has tried to love the girl many times, but he feels nothing, and so he thinks that maybe she is different and he will succeed. And then he asks if she minds if he sits next to her. Hearing this, the main character thought that he was very delicate and looked at him and nodded her head in agreement. The young gentleman offers to give her an answer whether he can kiss her. At this time, the girl thought that she had never really talked to men, much less kissed them. The girl remembers that one day she was in her garden and a guy came up to her and greeted her and said that she had beautiful flowers in her garden. And then he gave her a basket, said that it was from his mother. When Dad saw the guy, he screamed and told his daughter to go into the house right now. Her father was always afraid that she would meet a man and run away with him, and so he restricted her from any communication with men. The main character became curious about what it would be like to touch another person's lips, and she understands that if today, then perhaps she will never know what a kiss is. A guy kissed a girl on the lips, and she realized that it was a kiss. He says that if she were a guy, he would fall in love with her, but because he didn't feel anything from that kiss. At this time, the girl thought about what he didn't like. The young gentleman offers her to meet again in a couple of days, And at this time, she thought about what she wants to show him that she will support him, but she can't tell him anything. At this point, the aristocrat began to cry and said that he thought he felt that she wanted to tell him something. And then it is reported that she consoled him. Ellie comes up to the guy and wipes the tears from his cheeks. And at that moment, she thought that he just fell in love and thinks that there is nothing criminal about it. The girl thought that when she thinks that she will fall in love with someone, she begins to hate herself, and this feeling scares her more than death. The next day, sitting in the carriage, the main character remembers her father's words, that if everything goes as it should, then he will finally be able to quit this damn baron. Tomorrow they are going to the pub with her, and there their golden client will be waiting for her. Ellie wondered who it was this time, and suddenly she remembered Hayden and his kiss, and she thought that if someone asked her if she wanted to kiss him again, she would say yes. The lady thought that she would like to be the one Hayden wanted. The man says they've already arrived, and when the girl entered the room, she thought it smelled, and she'd never been to a pub before. Sitting at the table, the young lady does not understand where he is and why he has not arrived yet. And after a few minutes, a guy with black hair and scarlet eyes approached her. Seeing him, the main character thought that this was the client that Dad was talking about. He says so, she is that good listener. And then he apologizes for immediately speaking to her informally. And then he asks that if she wants, they will be informal. Ellie nodded her head, and he realized that she wanted to be addressed as you. The young gentleman offers her to sit down since he feels embarrassed in front of such a beauty for being rude, and then offers to start over and greets her. The guy says his name is Lennon, and he understands that she will never be able to pronounce his name, but he felt it necessary to introduce himself. The young gentleman informs her that he knows her name and suggests that she should worry about her, because her name is Ellie, and she was introduced by her father. He also knows that she was born mute and asks if this is true. Lennon says her father said so, and he says that as a child, he was not talkative and was irritated by his family, and so he thought he was very unlucky in life, but because he was too young, he could not influence anything. The guy says that he saw that whatever he said, it didn't affect anything, so he spoke less and less. At that time, the girl thought that you couldn't tell that from him. The aristocrat asks if she finds it hard to believe, but he claims that it is true, and he has no reason to make things up. Because at some point, he seemed to have broken through and became very talkative, and people began to listen to his opinion. Lennon asks her if she knows why. And then he says that his feelings and his thoughts need to be expressed, and if he doesn't express them, they might disappear. And so he has to speak out, come what may, because he believes that if he keeps quiet, there is no point in his thoughts and feelings. The aristocrat says that if she knew sign language, she would be able to express what is in her soul. And so he thinks that she really needs to learn self-expression. And then he touches her hand. At this time, the main character thought about why he was not indifferent to her at their first meeting. The young master says that he sees that she is wondering, and that is why he is telling her this. He also says that he has come in the hope of helping her to speak after what he heard from her father, and he has asked him to meet her. The guy says that she suits him well, and also thinks that she is beautiful. At this time, the main character thought that she was hearing such words for the first time. Lennon says that he wants to ask her a lot of questions, and sincerely wishes to restore her ability to speak, and so he offers her to play a game with him. At this time, the girl thought that she does not know any games except for the games of the dumb. He explains that this is a guessing game. And then he says that he really wants to know more about her, but understands that she cannot answer him. And therefore, he thinks that he can only guess. Ellie thought he was a strange man. And these were her thoughts after she had already agreed to start the game. The aristocrat asks the first question and asks if she thinks he is married. The girl thought about the fact that he does not have a ring and shook her head. In both directions, he answers that he is right. Lennon reveals that he doesn't interact with women except for one with whom he has regular meetings, and without her, his nights would be lonely. Then he asks if she's ever spent the night with a man. The girl again shook her head in both directions, and at that moment remembered that she had had a kiss. The aristocrat says, and that it seems to him that she did, because she became sad for a moment and asks, is it really about a kiss and unrequited love? At this time, the main character remembered Hayden, who likes men and understands that this is unrequited love if he cannot love her. The young gentleman says that she is a poor thing. She seems to have fallen into the trap of unrequited love, and then asks if they kissed without really knowing each other. The guy looks at the girl and says that judging by the expression on her face, she would really like to clarify. And he thinks that if they kissed in the heat of the moment, he asks if there might be a chance for him to get a kiss from her. Lennon says he can do it, and then asks if she wants to, at which point the girl blushes, and he apologizes for scaring her, and explains that he speaks without thinking like before. The aristocrat says that however it was a serious question, and then asks if he can kiss her at the next meeting, and says that he wants to see her again in a more decent place together, and not in this dark pub. The guy smiled and suggested Ellie to think about it carefully, and he said that it was time for him to also ask if she wanted to meet him again. Lennon said that blind obedience to her father would ultimately be her undoing. However, she knows this better than anyone. Sitting in the carriage, the main character does not understand how to get out of this cage, because she believes that the stagnation of her life has lasted since childhood and continues. Therefore, in her dreams, she thought that someday someone would take her by the hand and pull her out of this swamp. Ellie thought that maybe this man was Lennon. When the girl arrived home, she heard screams. She looked into the yard and saw her father, who was kneeling and asking for a little more time, since he had already said that he would pay. The man explains that he would give it, but this is the umpteenth time he asks him for a deferment, and then he says that this is the last time he will give him a month, and if he does not pay the full amount, by then there will be consequences. Ellie remembered that her father had been playing cards for as long as she could remember. At first it was just regular pubs, and then he got involved with gambling houses. He never stopped, no matter how hard it didn't hurt his family. The main character believes that saving the family has fallen on her shoulders, because she listens to the outpouring of strangers for money. When the daughter entered the yard, the father asks her if she had let him down today, and he says that they should not talk, that she should not open her mouth, and asks if she understood, because he believes that she is the only salvation for the family. At this time, the girl looking at those eyes full of madness, she clearly realized that if she did not make money for him, he would sell her into slavery as her newborn sister. Ellie likes to ride in a carriage, lost in thoughts, about life and her dreams. This is when she has the freedom to do what she needs, and she wants to be where she wants. The young gentleman asks the girl if she has fallen asleep. The main character shakes her head that she is not. He smiles and says that he thought she had fallen asleep. Lennon says that he has a younger brother, and he is quiet and phlegmatic. But still, he is his only brother, and even if he does not like him, he cannot respond in kind. The main character thought that she also has a sister, and therefore she understands him, and even if she is just a place for her to drain her dirty emotions. The aristocrat says he is irritating, but he usually starts the conversation first, and then asks her to guess what he said to him. The young gentleman is reported to have told him to close his mitten. At this time, the girl thought that he smiles only when he speaks of his brother, and she envies his brother because if she were not a dumb commoner but a noble lady, she wonders how quickly she would drown in this smile. Lennon suggests they play a game. Then he asks her if she can guess where he's taking her. She shakes her head. He realizes she doesn't know. The guy says that they are going to his estate today and asks why. Then he says that she will have to think about it herself. When they arrived, the young gentleman got out of the carriage and then offered his hand to the girl so that she could descend. It's starting to rain outside, and Lennon opens his umbrella. And then he asks her if she's thought about his proposal, and he asks her if she wants to answer him out loud. The guy says that he really wants to hear what her voice is like, and he assumes that it must be very gentle and as affectionate as she is. The aristocrat greets the girl and says that he is very glad that she has come to his family estate. Having seen his house, the main character is very surprised because she has never seen such a beautiful and luxurious mansion. Lennon says they don't have a garden as far as she can see because his younger brother arranged it so there would be more space for riding. Hearing this, the main character remembered that Hayden also talked about horse riding. When they entered the house, the girl saw Hayden. She, as well as he, were very surprised. However, he looked away as if he did not know her. Lennon grabs his brother's hand and asks why he decided to leave without even saying hello. Hayden slaps his hand away and then walks away, silently, very quickly. The young master explains that he is disgracing him, and this is the younger brother he spoke of as a half-brother. At that moment, a thought came to Ellie's mind that she was ashamed to even say what Lennon had said about his brother, and how Hayden avoided his gaze and broke away when his brother took his hand. The girl believes that perhaps the secret that Hayden entrusted to her concerns Lennon. When the main character walked along the corridor, she saw portraits of her ancestors and thought that they had a very noble family. And on one, she read that Count Hills realized that these brothers were counts, aristocrat. While choosing dresses, he asks the girl if she can come up to him for a second. Then he says that he and she are going on business today. Lennon says he will give her money, cash expenses, and it is only for her, and suggests that she remember that it is not for her father. Suddenly a lady enters the room and turns to Lennon Hills and asks when he will stop fooling innocent girls. And then she claims that at his age, it is time to think about settling down. The guy turns to his mother and asks how long she has been watching them. Then he claims that it is impolite to come in without knocking and suggests that she be kind enough to leave them alone. At this time, Ellie thought that this was his mother, and he did not look like her at all, and besides, she was very young. The aristocrat looked at the girl and said that he saw that she was wondering, and then explained that this woman was his stepmother, not his real mother. And he suggested that she not bother about it, but put on a dress and go back to him. The young gentleman said that the maid would help her. When Ellie put on the dress and looked at herself in the mirror, she didn't recognize herself even for a moment, because she had never seen such beauty, let alone worn it, and she didn't know that such beautiful dresses existed. The main character realizes that it looks expensive, and she wonders why Lennon decided to give it to her. That's what she thought when she returned to the room and was about to knock. But she noticed that the door was unlocked and peeked. Ellie saw something that shocked her. Lennon was kissing his stepmother, and she was very surprised. The girl entered the room, and the stepmother says that it is she, and offers her to stay happily. Hearing this, the main character thought about how she looked at her so calmly, as if she was not even ashamed that she saw them. The young gentleman was a little nervous, and asked Ellie when she returned, and then said that he should have told her. The young lady thought that she had seen something she should not have seen, and considered it a great scandal. An aristocrat approaches a girl and asks her to tell him honestly whether she has seen them. Then he asks her to answer him one question. He touches her hair and says that she knows how to make a person feel like a complete nobody. Lennon says he'll tell her everything, and then explains that he needs to take away from him the one he loves most, because he believes that's the way to destroy a person. The young gentleman explains that it was with this very intention that he kissed his stepmother. Hearing this, the main character thought that Lennon wanted to harm the one who loved his stepmother and therefore kissed her. But she thinks that he is not happy about this. On the contrary, he looks sad. Ellie walked up to the guy and then touched his face, and then hugged him. And at that time, she thought that she didn't know what was going on in his soul, but she wanted him not to be sad. The young gentleman tells the girl that he is taking revenge on his father, and he wants to take away his stepmother's love for killing his mother, because he thinks that he can make him feel this heartbreaking pain. The aristocrat turns to the girl and says that he does not understand why he tells her this to the one he met only for the second time. Lennon says that her father described her very accurately because she has a real talent for listening, and he has a desire to tell her everything, and at this time he even wants to pour out his soul to her. The guy asks if he can ask for more than just talk, and at this time he looks very intently into her eyes, and then explains that he really didn't want to kiss his stepmother, but the girl touches his lips. The young gentleman says that her perfume makes him sick, and her scent is very attractive. And then he says that he will ask her what she thinks he needs from her. Ellie looked at the guy and doesn't understand why he's looking at her like that. He tells her that he wants to kiss her and touches her hand, and then he tells her that if she doesn't take her hand away, now he'll take it as consent. The main character understands that Lennon gave her a choice, and she did not take her hand away, because she was curious if his kiss would be as gentle as with Hayden, and she hopes that at least Lennon will not regret kissing her. Hearing this, the young master immediately kissed the girl, and his kiss was so sudden, and then he asked if she could leave so that she would not have problems at home later, and he gave her this dress as if she was just a noble lady. The aristocrat announces that today's meeting is over. Then he says that she can go out the front door and the man will take her home. Hearing this, The main character does not understand what suddenly happened to his mood, and when she looked after him, she saw that his ears had turned red. Walking down the hallway, the girl thought about how Lennon looked so perfect. But at the same time, he was hiding such a dangerous secret, and he hated his father so much. Just like her too, and therefore she believed that they were similar in this. The main character thought about what she would like to tell him about it. Only his stepmother looks like someone she knows, and she assumes that maybe she is Hayden's biological mother. On the way home, Ellie reflects on her curiosity about why Lennon gave her that dress. She also assumes that he kissed her because he has feelings for her. But she realizes that at first glance, everything ended the same way as with Hayden. When the girl returned home, she saw her sister kneeling and begging her father, screaming not to sell her. Seeing this, she does not understand what happened. The sister turns to Ellie and asks her to stop him, and then explains that Dad said he wanted to sell her to someone. Her father explains to her that he has decided to marry off her sister. Hearing this, she does not understand what suddenly came into his head. And then she remembers that the time for repaying the debt is approaching, and he has not saved anything. And so he decided to sell his family until he repays the debt. The main character understands that now, just like last time he sold his child to pay off a debt, and she believes that now it is her older sister's turn. Sister turns to Ellie with tears on her face and asks her to help her. At this time, she thought about her older sister begging on her knees in the rain. The girl recalls that when she didn't like the way she dug up the flower bed, her sister spoke in a completely different tone. The father grabs the girl by the hand and says that Ellie won't help her even if they all beg him. Then he tells her to get up because they are waiting for her. As she leaves, Isabella screams and says that father won't stop and her little sister will be next. At this time, Ellie thought that they never communicated with her as sisters. Well, she still thinks that she is the one she treats best in this family. The main character looked at the carriage and thought that she couldn't just let them take it away. The girl touches her father's hand and asks him to stop and return her in her thoughts. He says that if she doesn't want him to find her a groom, then she offers to be obedient, and then he says that she will live as he tells her. The father claims that she has completed her task so far and then asks if she has any questions. At this time, the girl does not understand how he can do this, and she thinks that they are all just bags of money for her father. And she understands that she is next. Mom came home drunk that night, and she wasn't looking for Isabella. Ellie looked at her and thought that she knew everything. And at that moment, she remembered her sister's words, that her father wouldn't stop and that she would be next. The girl realizes that her sister's last words are playing in her head, over and over again. She also wonders who her father sold her to. At night, the main character could not fall asleep after this stormy day, and her thoughts did not leave her. Suddenly, the girl heard a noise and saw that someone had climbed into her room through the window. A man in a black cloak and black seals covered the girl's mouth and told her to be quiet. At this time, Ellie thought that he could kill her, and she became very scared. The main character thought that maybe this is the solution to break out of this damned life. And at that time, she thought that she just wants to relax and hopes that someday she will be understood. And at that time, they understand that there are no such people yet. The girl thought that she didn't know why she was even alive. The stranger asked in surprise why she wasn't even going to resist. Hearing his voice, the girl realized that it belonged to Hayden. The guy asks her if she wants to die, but the girl doesn't answer, and he says he knows what it is. Then he throws the knife on the floor and says he can't kill her. The main character looked at the guy and does not understand why he did not kill her, because she believes that this was her only chance to free herself. The man who broke into the girl's room at night says his full name is Hayden Hills. Hearing this, Ellie thought that he and Len really were brothers. The young gentleman says that she seemed to expect him to come to her and therefore was not afraid. The girl remembers that when they met the front door, she felt it. And at that time, she really had such a premonition. The guy tells her it's true, and he's Len Hills' younger brother. Then he explains that she knows his secret, and that's why he was afraid she'd tell. The main character heard this and understood that he, of course, did not finish saying that he wanted to kill her, but she does not understand why his hand trembled. And then she remembers his threats, that if she tells anyone, she will die, and he will know that she told, because no one else knows about it. Hayden reminds her that he told her it wouldn't cost him anything. However, the young lady doesn't understand why he didn't kill her. but at the same time, he tried to kill her. Ellie touches his face, and at that moment, she thought that she doesn't blame him. But suddenly, she heard her father calling her. He knocked hard on the door and told her to open it right away. The head of the furnace understands that her father cannot see Hayden in her room and thinks that he needs to be hidden, and then takes her hand. Dad screams and asks if Ellie is asleep. Then he tells her to open the door again. At this time, the girl hides the guy behind the curtains. Ellie opened the door for her father, and he asked in surprise why she was closing the door and wondered if she was hiding something from him. Father says that he knows that she was not asleep. And then he comes closer to the girl and says that the scene that she witnessed today does not give her peace, and that is why she knew that he would come. And then he claims that daughter knows him well. At this time, the girl thought that he could come for only one reason, and he came to confess that he sold her sister. The father sits down on the bed and says that she is special and not like all the other children. At this time, the daughter thought that her father sat down exactly where it was wet. The man says that her sister has always been a coward, and she is afraid of men because of such stupidity. Ellie thought that the stupidity he was talking about was actually a huge trauma that her sister had gone through. Ever since she was raped, she had been shaking at the sight of men. The main character understands that her father sold her into slavery, calling it that married her off. He claims that her wound will be healed by a new man, and he did all this for her own good. At this time, the daughter thought about what he did not for her benefit, but to pay his damn debts, because she understands that she did not want to go there. The father turns to the daughter, then takes her by the face and tells her not to look away and to listen to him, and asks if she remembers her duties. The man claims that Isabella will be happy in her marriage, and thanks to her, their family will be happy too. The father kisses his daughter on the head and sighs with relief, and says that now he will sleep like a log, and then he wishes her good night. At this time, the girl thought that she had bruises on her skin, and she did not understand how her father could be like this, and she also wondered why she was still playing this game with him. Ellie remembers that at first she played for the sake of him loving and praising her, but at this time she understands that this is no longer a game. The father returns to his daughter's room and then asks why her bed is wet. He wonders if someone has come to see her. Hearing this, the main character does not understand what to do now. At this time, Himas comes out and says that he is right, and Ellie came to him. The guy explains that he had urgent business with her and a secret that needed to be told, and then claims that next time he will warn him. The father was surprised when he saw the guy, and then says that it is he, his lordship, and since that is the case, it is not a big deal, and to thank him for coming. Seeing this, the girl does not understand why the father smiles and thinks that he is glad that Hayden is in her bedroom. The young gentleman asks the man if he could leave them alone, and then explains that he interrupted his conversation with Ellie. The father agrees, and he apologizes very much, but the master must know that his daughter is a virgin and she does not serve high gentlemen at night, and so he hopes that he will take her seriously. The father says that his daughter is a chaste bride and is sold for her weight in gold. Hearing this, the girl was surprised, and she was once again convinced that he really only sees a bag of money in her. After hearing these words, Ellie runs out of the room into the bathroom. The guy opens the door and asks if she has lived like this all her life, and he wonders if that is why she wanted him to kill her. Hayden asks if she thinks that death is better than this life. At this point, the young lady thinks that her life is a cesspool. The young gentleman says that he will help her leave her father, and in return she will continue to meet with Lennon and give him his secret. He says that if she agrees, then you will get everything and money power and whatever is in his power, because he thinks that with money she could at least leave here. The aristocrat claims that he is forcing her not to, and therefore she will have time to think. Sitting in bed, the girl thought about whether she could reveal Lennon's secret, and she also thinks about the fact that maybe Hayden will deceive her. That night, Ellie had a dream that she was running somewhere, and it was a happy dream about freedom. The next day, the girl, while taking care of the flowers, thought about what if she escaped from this hell like in a dream, and she wonders if they will find her. The young lady heard someone speaking to her, and she realized that it was a familiar voice, and when she looked back, she saw a very tall man. The guy says he's so big, it's hard to even look at him, and asks if that's true. Then he says his name is Labrador, and he's pleased to meet her. The girl looked at him and thought that she didn't know him, but he seemed like a very delicate man. and then she offered him her hand and thought that it was nice to meet her too. The Labrador shook the girl's hand, and at that moment she noticed that he was looking at her hands and didn't understand what was wrong with them and thought they were too dirty. Suddenly, the guy took her hand and then put it to his face and licked her fingers. The girl does not understand what he is doing and takes her hand away and also thinks he is crazy. The boy apologizes and then explains that her hands are so beautiful that he lost control of himself. He apologizes again and says that he did not do it on purpose because her father said that she has a gift for hearing secrets. Labrador explains that he came to her about what he just did. Hearing this, the main character thought about what it meant that he also came to confess to her. Ellie thinks that they should go into the house, then otherwise, if the neighbors see, they will misunderstand. But suddenly, she remembered her father's words about a chaste bride being sold for her weight in gold, and she thought that let people understand it as they want. The guy looked at the girl and asked what was wrong with her, and then he said that her face was gone, but she didn't answer, and at that time she tried to cover her face with her hand. When they came into the house, the girl made them some tea, and then they sat down at the table. The young lady does not understand why he is silent and where he is looking. The Labrador apologizes and says he doesn't know why her hands are so captivating to him. Then he says that actually he does know, and her hands are perfectly beautiful to him. Hearing this, Ellie thought that this was not how she imagined his secret, and therefore she considered him a strange man. The guy says that he and her father met in a pub. That day, due to an incident with his hands, he was fired and came to the pub to get drunk and complain about his fate. He told him completely drunk that his salvation is his daughter and that he can tell her any secrets. The father claimed that his daughter could relieve him of this pain, and so he just wanted to drop in and make an appointment with her. But he just suddenly touched her hands, which he could only dream of before. At this time, the young lady looked at her hands and thought that they were calloused, and she did not understand what he had found there. The Labrador says he knows what she's thinking. Then he says he has some unusual preferences, and he's embarrassed to say it. But for him, the ideal hands are the hands his mother had, who died 5 years ago. The boy remembers how his mother stroked his hair and says that maybe it's because he misses her, and when he sees beautiful hands, he wants to touch them and kiss them. The young gentleman says that, of course, she didn't think that he was her mother's. He didn't touch her hands like that and didn't kiss her. And then he says that he doesn't know why he is like that. The guy touches the girl's hands and says that she probably has never met such weirdos as him. At this time, the girl thought that there was nothing terrible about it, since she had seen a phenomenon worse in her life. The main character understands that, compared to the brothers who distort family relationships for their own purposes, and compared to the father who sells his daughter to pay off debts, this creature is a trifle. And she sees a person in him, and he is more human than others. Ellie touches the gentleman's hand and thinks it is a strange phenomenon, but its roots lie in the longing for his mother, and she sees how much he loves his mother. At this time, the Labrador says that he doesn't know where his tears come from, and then he says that she is right, because he loves both mom and dad, but he still loves mom, who often stroked his head more. The guy says pitifully that now the warmth of her hands is no longer with him. At this time, Ellie thought that she envies him, because she does not understand the love of a mother, what it is like. The girl wondered if she could say that her mother had ever loved her. The Labrador turns to the young lady and says that of course she may think that he is strange, but he really asks her to be his. Hearing this, the main character looked at him, and in her gaze, there was a question of who to be. The young gentleman looked at the girl and then smiled and asked her to be his mistress. And then he said that he understands, because she is surprised, and promised that he will not do anything indecent. The guy says that if she is the girl with perfect hands like his mother, then she will become his mistress, and therefore he will be saved. And then he explains that when she wants to praise him, she should just pat him on the head, or she can let him kiss her hand, and for him it will be enough for happiness. At this time, Ellie thought that it sounded very strange, but she understands that if in this way she could soften the pain of losing his mother. The Labrador says that if she doesn't want to, he will understand. The girl touches his hand, and at that time she thought that she would take her hand and answer yes. The guy was surprised, and then asked if she really wanted to be his mistress, and he thanked the girl because she was the first one who accepted him as he is. Ellie thought that every time she looked at him, she remembered her little brother, whom her father sold, and he was very similar, and she remembered that her brother often fell and therefore held her hand, and in the end, her father sold him and her older sister too. The girl thought that if she replaced the Labrador's mother, then he could replace her brother. The guy says that in honor of the one that she agreed to become his mistress, he asks if he can kiss her hand. The main character hesitates whether to give him her hand, and then hopes that he will not do anything indecent with the hand that reminds him of his mother's. The Labrador kissed the girl's hand, and then asked his owner if he could meet her tomorrow. Ellie hears this and doesn't understand what to do, since her father usually decides for her who she should see, and she doesn't understand if she can answer him what she wants. The next morning, the girl heard that the mistress was being called, and she wondered who had come to her so early. The guy says that he is a Labrador and asks if he is early, and then apologizes if he is early. The Labrador explains that in the army he woke up very early, and today he woke up even earlier from the desire to see her. At this time, the main character thought that she was a little scared, but she understands that nothing terrible happened, and she even feels good to wake up and have someone nearby. The girl points at his clothes and thinks that he is dressed differently today. The guy asks her if she noticed, and then she says that he chose the most beautiful clothes so that she would like them, and asks if she likes them. Ellie stroked his head and thought that he was exactly like her brother. He says that she praises him, and that makes him feel happy. The Labrador suggests that the girl wake up and do her morning chores for now, and he will go and prepare some simple breakfast, and then they will go for a walk together. The young lady thought that her father would be away for a few days, and therefore thought that this could be done. When the guy has made the soup, he asks the hostess if she liked the food. The girl nods her head so that he understands that she liked it. He asks if they are going for a walk now. They went outside, and the guy said that the weather was great today, and thought that he was happy that on this wonderful day he could walk with his mistress and hold her hand. On the street, Ellie saw people laughing and musicians playing, and she understands that this is happiness, the warm hand of the Labrador holding her, and she understands that when she feels bad, she so wants to have such warm memories in her life. Suddenly, the girl saw the guy stop and remembered that this was the estate of Count Hills. He reports that he worked in this house and beat the Count with his right hand. The Labrador says that the gentleman is not an evil person, but if someone crosses his path, he will not leave you alone. And so he ended up fired from service. Upon hearing this, Ellie realized that Labrador was a knight in the service of Earl Hills, and so she believes that there are many coincidences because she does not understand how it is possible that all three men who entrusted her with their secrets are connected in one way or another to the Earl Hills family. The guy suggests the girl to leave here, as he would not like to be seen at his gate. The lady agrees with him, as she also does not want to run into Hayden or Lennon right now. After the walk, the Labrador thanks his owner for agreeing to walk with him, and then says that today was a happy day and he will never forget it. And then he says that he would like to see her tomorrow, but he will not be able to, because he will have to come to the banquet. The young gentleman explains that the thing is that according to the rules, he has no right to refuse the invitation, even if he doesn't like it. The main character thought that Hayden and Lennon might be at this banquet, and when she came home, she saw a letter in which it was written, had she thought about why he gave her the dress, and therefore she should wear it and come. This letter was from Leon Hills. After reading this, the girl smiled and thought about how simple the sentences were. They think that this is a manifestation of care, and he used to be very caring. Ellie noticed that yesterday her father never returned home, and the department of dresses that Lennon gave her. She went out to the carriage which was already waiting for her. The coachman says that she hurried because the gentleman really asked her to be on time. Hearing this, the girl does not understand what the rush is and assumes that maybe she and her brother have something planned, and then she thinks that she is just worried and needs to calm down. On the way, the lady looked out the window and remembered that this was the place where she had walked with the Labrador yesterday, and she realized that everything was the same as it had been yesterday, and people were laughing and talking and musicians were playing, but she realized that she was missing one thing, and that was the touch of the Labrador's hand. The coachman announced that they had already arrived, and at the door, Lennon met her. He greeted the lady and said that he wanted to order the maid to tidy her up, but saw that it was not necessary. The young gentleman touches her face and says that she is very beautiful, and then asks if she can guess where he is taking her. And then he takes her hand. At this time, the girl thought that the young gentleman was dressed formally today and thought that he probably wanted to go to some event, and that was where he was taking her. Lennon holds the girl's hand and tells her not to be afraid, and then asks her to go faster. She heard music playing, and he asks the right answer. The young gentleman announces that he invites her to a reception and that today she is his dance partner. The aristocrat explains that only couples come to this reception, and that is why he invited her. Hearing this, the main character does not understand why Lennon Hill's the eldest son of the Earl, and he has every chance of inheriting the title. He could have chosen any of the noble ladies, but he chose her. Lennon asks the girl to guess why he chose her. At that time, she thought that he sometimes really irritates her, because he wants to make up some story so that she would be so offended. Ellie remembered that Labrador was also going to some reception today and assumed that this could be the one. And when they entered the main hall, the girl does not understand why everyone is only looking at them. The young lady saw Hayden at the ball and thought that she had come to the party with Lennon, and he might assume that she was against him. And then she remembered the words he had said that she would continue to see him and would tell him his secret. The main character understands that Hayden wants to know Lennon's secret, and at the same time, he himself is afraid that she might give him and the secret to Lennon. The young gentleman turns to the girl and suggests that she not slouch in public, but straighten her back. Since she is here as a couple for the main contender for the title of Count Hills, he embraces the girl and says that no one has the right to look down on her. Lennon suggests not to be afraid of their looks. Hearing this, the girl thought that he thinks that she is afraid of others, but she understands that his words have had an effect, and she feels more confident, and she thinks that she has nothing to be afraid of, since she has not done anything reprehensible. The aristocrat suggests Ellie to look at his heartless brother, who demonstratively does not notice him. The lady thought that, fortunately, he is busy and does not pay attention to them, and he is talking to someone. Ellie looks at Hayden and doesn't understand why he looks tense and out of place, and so she thinks that maybe he doesn't like being around crowds, and she doesn't understand why he keeps hanging out with them. The girl ponders that perhaps Hayden is doing this for Togo, because he needs to surpass his brother to become the heir, and so he believes that this is a struggle for the inheritance. Lennon turns to the young lady and asks if she wants to go out on the balcony, as he believes that they have already made their mark on society, and therefore, that is enough. At this time, Ellie thought that he was very confident and full of superiority. She thought that if Haiti wasn't here, then Labrador probably wasn't here either, and she wondered where he was. Lennon says it's funny and asks if she's seen their faces, and then says that everyone tries to choose a more noble and rich couple to hang their status, but he thinks that they are most concerned with who he came with. The aristocrat asks who would have thought that the Count's heir would choose a commoner as his mate. And then he says that he is bored with them all, even among the nobility, all the same and all predictable. The young gentleman says that the only thing that helps him feel alive is meeting her, and asks the girl if she wants to say something. Ellie thought that she really wanted to talk at that moment, but the desire to get out of this hell was stronger for her, and she felt her importance when she began to listen to secrets. The main character remembers the words of her father, who told her that she was born to listen, and she believes that her sister sacrificed herself to save her, and she should not speak otherwise. She understands that everything will be lost, and she also wants to have money. Lennon says she's still silent, and he's sorry, and then he touches the girl's face and asks if she has another client. Besides him, he looks at her and says, "He's right." The young gentleman says he hopes Ellie can give it up. Then he tells her that she has been told all her life that she must be useful, or she is not needed. Hearing this, the protagonist thought that it was true because she always believed that she had to deserve love and be useful. He tells her to know that there is value in her very existence, even if she does not sacrifice herself for others. Lennon says that he trusts her, and trusts that she will keep his secret. At this time, the lady does not understand how he can trust her, and remembers that she has already been offered to give away his secret. The young master said that he saw honesty in her eyes, and that her eyes were beautiful. She thought that it was because he looked into her eyes so often. The guy asks if he can kiss her, and then he hugs her and touches her lips. He turns to Ellie and asks her to forgive his jealousy, and then he says He doesn't know if he can ask her about that and wonders who her other clients are. Hearing this, the girl became a little worried. He says that if she doesn't want to talk, then he understands, and in any case, asks her only for one thing, that she be only his listener from now on. And if necessary, then he will pay as much as those people pay. The main character thought that money is the way to freedom, and she really needs it. She touches his palm and shows that he said he would give her for personal expenses and asks when he will give it to her. The young gentleman looked at her and smiled and also said that she was cute. He wondered if his offer was tempting. At this time, the young lady thought that she was not mercenary, but she just really needed money now. Lennon agrees and asks her to guess something, and then says that if she answers correctly, he will give her twice as much as he promised yesterday. He says that his bodyguard is present at the reception today and suggests finding him among the crowd, and he will add only that this person is temporarily suspended from his position. The young master explains that he is, of course, a very faithful servant, but young and reckless, and therefore was removed because he had done something indecent. Hearing this, Ellie remembers Labrador's words about how he was fired because of his passion for hands and came to the pub to get drunk and complain about life. And she thought about the fact that maybe he kissed Lennon's hands. Ellie walked out into the hall and thought that she needed to see if there was a Labrador in it. When the main character saw the guy, she looked at him, and he at that time looked at her, and the girl thought that he recognized her. The Labrador, screaming, asks his owner what she is doing here. Lennon sees the guard and asks if he knows Lady Ellie. The lad, when he saw that his lordship was near the young lady, asked what he was doing there. The young gentleman explained that he was at home. The main character points her finger at the guard. The aristocrat turns to the girl and asks if this stinking dog is also her client. At this time, she thought about wanting to keep it a secret, but Labrador turned to her first and more precisely yelled at the whole area, and she does not understand what to do now. The guard turns to the gentleman and asks why he is putting the mistress in such an awkward position. Then he grabs the girl by the hand and asks her to go. At this time, the young lady looked at the guy and did not understand where he was pulling her so hard, but suddenly her body was near his chest. The guy apologizes and then explains that he only wanted to gently pull her towards himself. The young gentleman asks the Labrador if he has forgotten his place, and then asks what he allows himself to do in his presence. Lennon says that whatever may have happened between them, but today, Lady Ellie has come as his date, and then he orders him to disappear from his sight, and suggests that he not forget that it is he who decides whether he returns to duty or not. The guy turns to the hostess and apologizes, and then says that he will go and they will meet later. Ellie thought that even though he claimed that she was his savior, Lennon was right, and she had to stop sacrificing herself for others. The girl understands that salvation does not come from either side, and believes that salvation is the work of the one being saved. The young gentleman asks the young lady if this plebeian has told her about his love of perversion. At this time, she does not understand what to do, since he keeps returning to this topic. Ellie decides she needs to cheat, and she touches his hand and shows that she guessed correctly, and therefore offers to pay him double the amount. The aristocrat thought that he couldn't leave it like that, and then he said that he had lost, and he said that every time he talked to her, he became more confident that her purity would make him a good man. And at that time, he forgot that he was the shameless one who kissed his stepmother. Ellie looked at the guy and thought that he was good once, and at that time he took care of the fate of an ordinary commoner. And she understands that she cannot utter a sound, but she would really like to tell him this out loud. Lennon says that they have made a social appearance today, and he will walk her home. Hearing this, she thinks that she would not like the gentleman to run into her father, and she thinks that as the eldest heir, he is obliged to stay here for a reception longer. The aristocrat says that he will walk her to the cab, and the girl agrees with him. The main character thought about how she feels like all this is a sweet dream on a summer night. But she understands that dreams are an illusion, and reality remains the same. And so she believes that she must learn that her reality is not at all like a sweet dream. Lennon asks the girl what she is thinking about. The young lady thinks that she is thinking about nothing. He suggests that she sit down, since it is time to go home. When Ellie got into the carriage, the gentleman sat down next to her. Seeing this, the girl looked at him with such a look that he couldn't sit with her and he had to leave. The young gentleman says that if she has any objections, she should say it out loud, and then asks if she thought he was obliged to stay at the reception, and he says that this was not part of his plans, because right now he only wants to be near her. The aristocrat says that his mistress and he did not know that she would be so embarrassed by his words, and asks if he had not said before that he was never bored with her. Hearing this, the main character does not understand why her cheeks suddenly flushed so much. The young gentleman says that he does not know how she is, but he wants to see her tomorrow. The girl gave him her hand, and he thought that she agreed. Lennon shakes the young lady's hand and tells her that he is giving her homework to guess where they are going tomorrow. He asks if she has thought about why he chose her as his date. Hearing this, the girl thought about it. The aristocrat touches her cheek and says that he has already told her about this 1,000 times, that he feels happy next to her. And since she did not guess today, but if she guesses tomorrow, then he will see how he can reward her. The young gentleman gives the girl money and says that there is enough money in it so that she will not be sad. And then he calls her his lady. Hearing this, Ellie thought that he had never called her that before. He says that she should be free and find herself because life is short. The girl does not understand how to find herself, because she thinks that if she, who was always pushed around by those around her, suddenly began to live the way she wants. The young lady thought that she would start by managing the money herself. When Ellie entered the house, she heard her mother calling her. The girl came closer to her and saw that her mother was drunk, and she remembers that she had always been a drunkard, but she became interested in when she started drinking. The girl remembers that she started drinking from the day her father sold her brother, and her mother always cried that her boy died. Mom asks her daughter if she knows where her sister is now, and then she says that she met Isabella on the street, and she was walking with a handsome, richly dressed man, and he had golden hair, and she thinks that it looks like he is some kind of nobleman. Hearing this, the main character thought that Hayden has golden hair, but she thinks that it is too early to draw conclusions, and she needs to find out. Suddenly, the girl heard someone knocking on the door. The guy said that it was her faithful dog who came. The mother woke up and asked her daughter since when she got a talking dog. At this time, the little one thought that she was ashamed to admit it, but this dog was actually a person. Last night, Labrador sitting on the bed thought that his mother is an angel, and he hopes that his new owner will be pleased with him, and he also thinks that his owner is beautiful and has angelic hands. The guy believes that he was honest about himself, and even after that, she graciously accepted him as he is, and so he hopes that thanks to him, she will smile every day. The Labrador doesn't understand why he keeps thinking that his master and his mistress were together that night, and so he hopes that it's just an agreement like he had with his mistress. But he notices that Lennon likes her. The guy thought that he would really like to be her only close friend, and so he decides to go to the market tomorrow for groceries and cook for her, because he thinks that maybe then the hostess will understand that he is better than Lennon. The Labrador is thinking that if she becomes his owner, the girl will be able to forget about household chores for the rest of her life. The guy thinks that if only he hadn't been unlucky enough to touch the hands of this one, which immediately caused all sorts of rumors to fly, then he would also have brought home a decent salary. And so he understands that what's done can't be undone, and believes that he should think only about his mistress. The Labrador thinks that his mistress doesn't live alone, and hopes that she doesn't have someone who makes her breakfast early in the morning. And at that moment, he knocks on the door and thinks that if it's not his grumpy master, then he doesn't mind. Ellie opens the door and shows with her finger that he was quiet. At this time, Mom came to the door and asked what kind of beautiful cavalryman came to them. The Labrador apologizes for disturbing them, and then explains that he brought them groceries. Mom says he is handsome, and therefore she will not disturb them. Doves, the guy asks in surprise if this woman is her mother, and then thought that he cannot look her in the eyes. The Labrador asks his owner if she is hungry, and then says that he will cook food now. And at that moment, he thinks that he still blushes from her mother's words, and therefore, he thinks that he should change the subject. The guy says that it's good that her father is not home, and explains that he was afraid of his uncomfortable questions. Hearing this, the girl thought that he was not afraid without reason. Luckily for them, he will not be here today. The main character thought that she was very hungry, and did not understand how she could throw him out now. And she thought about what she would like to eat. What to cook, Labrador. The guy says that the beef soup is ready, and then invites the girl to try it. When the young lady tasted the spoon, She thought that it was so delicious that she even thought he was a cook, not a knight. And she realized that although it was not what they usually eat for breakfast, it was very tasty. Ellie thought that for her eating was just one of the routine actions to maintain life. But it turns out that when you eat with someone, it is pleasant and joyful. The Labrador says that he has already asked his father's permission, and therefore thinks that his arrival would not upset him, and remembers that he said that the lady had a meeting with another client today. The girl moves her lips and asks if he has seen her father. He replies that he met his father in that very pub. Hearing this, the main character was surprised because she thought he was busy with something, but he was in the pub all this time. The Labrador asks the owner if she knows who her client is for today. He also wonders if it is his master. At this time, the girl thought that he guessed right. And of course, it is Lennon. When Ellie saw the guy off, she thought that, fortunately, she and the Labrador would not cross paths, and he had already left. Lennon asks the girl if she forgot what she promised, and then reminds her that he asked her to think about what they would do today, and he can see in her eyes that she forgot. The young gentleman informs her that he will take up all her time today, and then suggests that they get into the carriage. Sitting in the carriage, the girl looked out the window and remembered that her mother said that she had seen Isabella on this street, and she thought that perhaps she would meet her today. Lennon looked at the lady and asked if she was looking for someone, and he assumed that maybe her lover. And then he said that if she needed help, she could tell him, and since he could do a lot. Hearing this, the main character thought that if she had told him, he could have helped her find her sister, but she believes that she cannot say this and still does not fully trust him, and she assumes that her sister's husband may be in Hayden. The young gentleman says that if she decides to do something, she should tell him, and he won't force her. The young lady thought that she doesn't understand how she will pay for it later. Ellie looked at the house and realized that it was the estate of the Earl of Hills, and she did not understand how her commoner could be allowed there. Lennon gets on his horse and then tells the girl to give him her hand, and they will go somewhere together. He explains that when he needs to unwind, he rides a horse. The main character looked amazing, and she doesn't know how to ride it because she has never ridden a horse before. The young gentleman says that he will go slowly, and therefore suggests that she should not worry. At this time, the girl thought that she understood him because the wind in her face, the clatter of hooves, the beauty around all this is very pleasant. Ellie realizes that she is embarrassed to sit so close to him, and then she shows him not to look at her, but at the road. The guy says that he does not want to look at the road, and says that they are driving slowly, and therefore she is safe. The young master says that looking at her face is much more pleasant than looking at the boring courtyard of the estate. At this time, the main character thought that she felt someone's gaze, and when she looked at the house, she saw Hayden standing near the window. The girl thought that Hayden was looking at them, but realized that he was looking at Lennon. And she remembers that he was talking about someone he was in love with. The servant tells Mr. Lennon that his guest has already arrived. Hearing this, the young lady became curious about who came to see him. The young gentleman helps the girl off her horse, and then asks what he should do. Since he has an important meeting and the man has arrived early, he suggests that they talk, and then he will go. Ellie points with her finger that she wanted to ask something. He asks what exactly. The girl asks if he has a girlfriend. The guy answers that he has forgotten how to love. Lennon explains that this is what her condition is, and it is an endless abyss of pain, and he is unable to love anyone now. Hearing this, the girl thought that she has the same thing, and believes that they all live in this hell. The young lady understands that the young gentleman has forgotten how to love, and she who never knew what love is, and Hayden who is being destroyed from within by passion. Lennon touches the girl's hair and says that he hopes she gets home on her own. Hearing this, she holds up her fingers to see if he will walk her home. The young master says he has to go, and the young lady has to go home. When Ellie entered the house, she heard her father's voice and thought that he had been gone for several days, and now he had decided to show up. The girl overheard a conversation about whether it was possible to make sure that after the operation, there would be no bruises and that her appearance would not be damaged, and she became interested in what he was talking about. And then a voice of some man says that he will try to cut them out as carefully as possible, and only a bottle of a special solution will be needed, and it costs money. The stranger asks if there is any way to make her not mine. Hearing this, the girl thinks that he wants to make her blind. The stranger replies that there is a drug with which they burn out the vocal cords. The father asks if it is possible to perform an operation to remove the eyes tomorrow. The man replies that it is possible. Hearing this, Ellie thought that she had to run away, and she thinks about how her father used her to save up a huge amount of money, and therefore she thinks that he has become completely different from himself, and soon he will take away everything from her except her ears. The main character understands that she will remain his golden antelope, carrying money for the rest of her life. Suddenly, the girl sees Hayden, and he motions for her to be quiet and claims that she needs to leave. Looking at him, she doesn't understand how he even got there and what he's doing. The young gentleman explains that he came to her because he wanted her to listen to him. The young lady explains that she has nowhere to go, and therefore thinks it is better for him to go. Hayden claims he's trying to help her, then asks what's wrong. He asks if she heard her father and wonders if she doesn't need it. Then he explains that he just doesn't want her to get hurt. The young gentleman offers to listen to him because he thinks that she needs to run away. At this time, the girl looked at him and thought that she could not trust him. Ellie remembers Hayden's words about how he promised her that he would help her escape, but in exchange, she had to date Lennon and find out his secret for him. And she thought about how Lennon was the first person who was truly kind to her, and therefore she could not betray him. The main character believes that even if Hayden really cares about her life, he orders her, and she serves his purposes, and therefore she considers him the same as her father. The young gentleman touches the girl's face and says that she knows better than he what it's like to be used. And then he says that he will not ask anything from her as long as she stays alive. And he says that he will return tomorrow, and he hopes that she will come to her senses. At this time, Ellie thought about what would happen if she ran away right now, and all she needed to take was the purse with the money that Lennon gave her. The father turns to his daughter and asks what she is doing there, and then says that she is on time and offers to say hello to his guest. The father tells the stranger that they will see each other tomorrow. Hearing this, the main character thought that tomorrow is her last day. The father suggests his daughter to go inside because the night is cool. At this time, she thought that she has no time and tomorrow she must escape from this hell. Sitting in her room, the girl thinks about the fact that she can leave while he is sleeping. But her father is not sleeping, and he is sitting and drinking, and so she does not understand what to do. The young lady thinks that she will simply wait until he goes to work at the Baron's house, and maybe he will leave early in the morning. And she thinks that there is even some relief in this. It would be better if he left earlier. Ellie reflects on that she thought she would never break out of this vicious circle of obedience, and so she tried to come to terms with it and just go with the flow. But she understands that if she doesn't escape, she will regret it for the rest of her life. The girl believes that this is her last chance, although she, a helpless doll, must challenge the danger. The main character took with her the money that Lennon gave her and the dress that he gave her, and she wants to go as far away as possible, and she will go where her father will not find her. Ellie realizes that her 3 clients may be able to find her, but they want the mute Ellie to keep their secrets, and so she believes that she needs to end this now. Suddenly, the girl fell asleep and dreamed that she was lying on the bed, and next to her was a man with a knife in his hand. She realized that this was the man who came yesterday, and she did not understand what he was doing next to her. The girl guesses that he wants to cut out her eyes, and then she screams. Ellie realized she was dreaming and breathed a sigh of relief. She thinks she needs to calm down because she screamed and suddenly realized she could talk. The main character understands that there is no time to grieve now, and she must leave. And she looked at her watch and realized that at this time he should have already left, and consider that she woke up on time. At this time, she thought that she should not forget the money. When the girl came down the stairs, she saw that her father was sitting at the table and eating breakfast, and her mother was sitting next to him. Seeing them, the daughter was surprised because she did not understand why he did not leave. The father announces that he has decided to quit his job. Hearing this, the daughter thinks that she is his perfect doll, bringing in money, and he is already neglecting work. And at that time, she thinks that she should not allow this and should run away. The father asks his daughter if she went to the garden. The girl thought that she often goes there. The father asks if he can go with her. The man asks the girl if she remembers that she has to ask his permission to leave the house. The girl thought that she will still have a chance, and therefore she needs to make it before this one comes here. Ellie is digging a bed near the flowers, and her dad is watching her all the time. And at that time, she thought that if only he would get distracted for a minute. The mother screams and calls her husband to come and see her. He asks what the damned woman wants. She calls him to go faster. At this time, the main character thought that now was her chance. And then she quickly approached the fence and thought that she had very little time left. The father screamed and asked where his daughter was going. The girl turned and looked at him and then quickly ran away. The father screams, telling her to stand. And at that time, the girl runs with all her might, thinking that this is her last chance. And at that time, she remembers the words of her father. Can the doctor perform an operation to remove the eyes tomorrow? The main character thinks that it is quite possible that he will do it today. And she understands that if her father catches her, she will have to remain a living doll for the rest of her life. But she does not want this. After some time, the girl thought that she had no more strength to run, but she hears her father's cries, and at that moment, she understands that she must not catch his eye. Ellie ran out into the street and realized that she needed to hide. Then she saw an alley and ran there. At this time, the main character was very scared and thought that she really wanted him to leave and not see her. The father comes up to his daughter and asks why she makes her elderly father run after her like that. Upon hearing this, the girl doesn't understand what to do now, and the father insists that she should go home. Suddenly, Ellie saw a woman in a cloak, and then he turns to her and begs her to help her, but says nothing. The father tells the girl to go home and not bother passers-by. The main character silently begs for help, but her father insists that she go home. At this time, the girl screaming asks for help. The man in the cloak asks the girl if he can help her. Then he turns to the man and asks if he is her father. He replies that he is and explains that his daughter is just a little capricious, and therefore says that she did not interfere. At this time, Ellie looked at the woman and silently begged her not to believe him, because it was not true. The father wants to grab the girl, but the woman removes his hand and says that the young lady does not want this. The man asks in surprise why she won't let her father bring his own daughter home, and he says that she'd better leave while she's still healthy. And at that moment, he thinks that some girl has counted him and thinks that he won't hit her. The woman lifts her leg and knocks the man to the floor with one kick. Then she turns to the girl and tells her to go. The woman asks if she feels sorry for the old goat. Ellie looked at her father and said goodbye to him silently. And when she saw the carriage they were approaching, she realized that this woman was an aristocrat. The stranger says that if she has nowhere to go, she can stay with her, and then she says that she can take her wherever she wants. The woman says that her father will not leave her. He will follow her. At this time, the main character thought that it was terrible, and she does not understand whether she can get into a carriage with the first person she meets, since she does not even see her face. The noblewoman asks if she is afraid to go with her, and then throws the hood off her head and swears on the honor of her family that she will not harm her. Ellie looked at the girl in surprise and does not understand why she looks the way she does. The stranger says that it was enough for her to look into her eyes, and she immediately wanted to help her. The woman says that she has beautiful eyes, and the girl says that hers are beautiful too. The main character, enchanted by the twin girl, got into the carriage. The aristocrat asks if she has many problems, and then she says that she can cry because she needs to give vent to her emotions. And then she hugs the girl and says that she will support her. The girl felt the warmth of her hands and thought that maybe this was a dream. After 17 years in the hell created for her by her father, she was finally free. The aristocrat says that she must tell her that it is fate that they met. And then she says that for the last few years, she has been trying her best to find her double. The main character is surprised to hear this. The stranger says that she was about to give up, as if by the will of fate they met her. At that time, Ellie could not stop crying in the carriage and fell asleep. The man asks the girl if she has told her about their situation. She replies that she hasn't yet. Then he asks how she would have done it since the girl was crying the whole time. And he explains that a different atmosphere is needed for such a story. At this time, the main character does not understand whether she should wake up now and thought that it would be better for her to pretend to be asleep. The man asks the lady if she thinks that a girl who can't even speak will be able to replace her. The woman suggests being quieter because he might wake the girl up. At this point, Ellie thinks that she can't see, but she can feel them looking at her, No, and after a few minutes, she thinks it's time for her to wake up. The guy saw the girl getting out of bed and asked if she was awake yet. The lady asks the girl if her name is Ellie, and at that moment, she remembers her father's words that she needs to go home because she shouldn't cause trouble to strangers. The stranger apologizes for not introducing herself earlier, and then says that her name is Hannah Ferv, and the man who is looking at them with a displeased face is her brother Hardwin. The young gentleman looked at the girl and said that he was pleased to meet her. The lady says that they are the children of Count Ferv, and she is the countess, and Hardwin is her assistant. And then it is reported that she wanted to ask something right away, whether she can speak normally. The countess says that she wants to tell them about their situation first. Then she apologizes for saying so right away and explains that they don't have much time. The lady says that she may die in half a month. And when she is gone, someone must inherit her title of count. She says that her parents died early, and she has no other brothers or sisters. Therefore, the title must go to Hardwin. The countess says that the brother has no right to inheritance because of age restrictions in the law. Since inheritance is possible from the age of 18, and he is 17, Hannah says he can only inherit the title next year. But she understands that her time is running out, and therefore the title may go to their cunning cousins, who will not miss their chance. The countess explains why she spent so many years looking for a girl like her. When I saw her, I thought that fate had smiled on her. She says that until Hardwin comes of age, the most suitable person for her place is her Ellie. The countess sits down next to the girl and says that she will give her money, or whatever she asks for, and then she touches her hand. Hannah says that in exchange she can pretend to be her until Hardwin inherits the earldom. Hearing this, Ellie understands that with money, she will be able to start a new life. And she thinks that for now she can hide from her father in this place, and therefore she thinks that this is a very good offer. The countess says that if she doesn't like her request, she has the right to refuse, and then she says that she needs to hide somewhere from her father. Hannah says that if she pretends to be her, no one will know that she is Ellie. At this time, the main character does not understand how she will take her place if she is not able to speak. The countess says that it is already late, and therefore suggests that the girl rest here and think about everything. Ellie thought about how she had never heard of a Ferv, and thought it was probably because it was so far from her home. The girl saw that she had lost the money Lennon had given her, and she did not understand what she would do if she ever saw her father again. Suddenly, the girl heard someone knocking on the door, and then the guy says that it is Hardwin and asks if she is still asleep. Ellie opens the door and thinks that he probably forgot to tell her something. The young gentleman asks if he can come in for a moment. Then he comes in and sits down. He places a candle on the table and invites the lady to sit down too. The main character looked at him and did not understand what he was doing, because she saw white shoes in his hands. Hardwin says he wasn't sure the size was right, so he eyeballed it and went with what he had. Ellie looked at her feet, and she didn't even notice that she had been barefoot all this time, and she didn't think that the man who seemed indifferent would be so attentive, and she thinks that he is actually gentle and affectionate. The young gentleman looked at the girl and asked what was wrong, seeing her surprised face. Then he explained that she should not worry, as the shoes were new. The main character put on the shoes and realized that the size was perfect. Hardwin apologizes for his sister being so ignorant. He then explains that she is a stranger, and it was rude to force her to help them with their problems. The young gentleman asks the girl what happened to her that she became like this. At that moment, she thought about what she wanted to answer, but for some reason she couldn't. The guy looked at the girl and said that he understood, because he could not expect anything from her. And then he offers her to go to bed and says that he is already leaving and apologizes for waking her up. Hardwin tells the girl to wear these shoes tomorrow. When the young gentleman left the room, the girl saw that he smiled, and at that moment, she thought that if she became Hannah Ferv, she wondered if she would be able to see that smile often. Suddenly, the guy turns to the girl and then comes closer to her, and she understands that if this continues, he will kiss her. However, it all turned out to be a dream, and in this dream, she saw Lennon, who was looking for her. The next morning, sitting at the table, Hannah says that she is deathly ill. Ellie asks if there is any way to help her. She replies that unfortunately, there is not, since it is a hereditary disease, and it is good that at least it is not noticeable from the outside. The young lady explains that she was born with a weak heart, and her father died early for the same reason. And so she trained hard to be stamina-loving in order to prolong her life. Hannah says that nothing has changed except her physical form, and sometimes she couldn't breathe properly because it felt like she was dying right now. The Duchess says that her heart is beating very slowly and feels like it will stop soon. Then she turns to and says that she now thinks she understands the whole situation. Hannah asks why she can't speak and wonders if she is mute. At this time, the girl wrote an answer on paper that she was used to being silent and therefore forgot how to speak. After reading this, the lady asks if she would like to speak now. Ellie nodded her head in agreement. The young lady says that if there is a desire, then she has no doubt that she will learn again. And then she reminds that she asked her to help them yesterday and asks what she decided in the end. At this time, the main character thought that it wasn't that she wanted to, she was just not sure that it would work out because she was used to doing what others said, and she didn't know if she would be able to make independent decisions. The young mistress says that she just needs to show that Hannah Fevre is alive, and Hardwin will take care of everything else, and he will manage. And then she reminds her that she told her that he is her assistant. The Countess says she hopes the young lady will not delay about it. At this time, a young gentleman approaches them and turns to the sister offers to stop pressuring the girl, and then asks how it is possible to make such a difficult decision in one day. Hannah asks how many days she should give him, and he replies at least 2 days. Hearing this, the Duchess turns to Ellie and explains that he was just joking, and then tells her to laugh. Even if it's not funny, she must laugh. Otherwise, he will be offended. The young lady asks what a man who rarely visits the garden has forgotten here. Hardwin says that a letter was delivered to her, and that is why he came to deliver it. Upon hearing this, Hannah asks if he is really her brother, since he doesn't look like himself, and then offers to give the letter to her. After reading the letter, the Duchess says that a proposal of engagement has been sent to a man who is about to die. She looks at Ellie and sees that she is somewhat thoughtful, and asks if she should tell her who it is from. The young lady reports that this was written to her by the Duke of Hills. At this time, the main character thought about the fact that Lennon is the heir to the title of Duke of Hills. Jealous Hayden, II, the son of the Duke and Labrador, Lennon's knight. And it seems to her that they are connected by more things than she assumed. The girl reflects on the fact that she thought that destiny would never bring her together with these men again, and she wonders how to behave if she meets them, and she also wonders who proposed to Hannah Lennon or Hayden. The Duchess says that it would be a pity if she refused. At this time, the main character thought that this was great, since Hannah and Hardwin do not know that she knows the Duke. Hannah turns to her brother and asks him to imagine how hard it is for Ellie to think when he looks at her like that. Then she says that she knows they are very similar, and so she suggests that he refrain from doing this. The young gentleman heard this and told her not to talk nonsense. Then he turned around and left. The Duchess says that sometimes he seems rather cold, but in reality he is very nice. And then she touches the girl and invites her to come in and talk some more, and at the same time, have a drink. Hannah seemed to forget that death was on her heels when she drank. The protagonist watched her discuss only the past even when drunk, and realized that she knew better than anyone that she had no future. The Duchess turns to Ellie and says that they have been talking so much all day, and it seems to her that they are like two sisters. After some time, the main character felt that she smelled something pleasant, and when she opened her eyes, she saw Hardwin, who was trying to cover her with a blanket. The girl thought that she was very grateful to him for his care, and then she did not realize how she pronounced his name, syllable by syllable. The surprised guy asks her why she just called him by name. Then he asks her to try again. At this time, the young girl wondered if she could repeat the name again. He persuaded her to be brave, and then he said that, even though she stuttered, she said his name out loud. Ellie is unsure, but says his name again. Hearing the girl speak, the guy throws the blanket, then says he knew she could do it. The young gentleman asks if she is going to bed now. The young lady nods her head, and he objects, and tells her not to nod, but to try to answer with words. Ellie looked at the guy and doesn't understand where he is so confident that she can talk, and she wonders why he trusts her without any reason. I think it might be because she looks like Hannah. The main character doesn't know why, but trust gives her the courage to move forward. Hardwin looked at the girl in surprise and asked why she was crying. Then he calmed her down and asked if she was crying because of him or because she was happy. The young gentleman touches the young lady's head and says that she is a good girl and suggests that in future she should not cry anymore, but only smile. The guy takes his sister on his shoulders and says that he will carry her. And when the main character was left alone, she thought that it suddenly became quiet, and that is why she feels lonely. The girl still thought that she had become accustomed to loneliness, but after ferv. But suddenly she saw the door open and the young gentleman wish her good night. Ellie was surprised because he came back to tell her this, and therefore she thinks he's cute. Lying in a comfortable soft bed, the main character thought about Hannah's offer. She reflects on the fact that she did not plan to escape, and she believes that their meeting with Hannah, who made her a good offer, happened by chance. The young lady understands that the Duchess, unlike her, knew that such a moment would come for her, and if the title were to pass to any of the Fevre cousins, then Hardwin would be thrown out of here. Ellie thought that she didn't want to see him grieve and wonder if maybe she should agree. The girl thought that when she becomes Hannah Fevre, it will be a win-win for all three of them, and she thinks that for Fevre the benefit is clear and she will have money to run away somewhere, and so she decides to agree. The next day, the young gentleman asks if he can come into the room. When the guy came in, the main character looked at him and didn't understand what was wrong with him because he didn't look well. She was also curious about what was going on and asked what had happened. Hardwin reports that sister can't breathe properly. Then they go to her room. The brother asks the Duchess how she feels. She replies that she is in pain. Then he asks if he thought she would never wake up again. At this time, the main character thought that yesterday the Duchess looked more alive. And then she hugs the girl and reflects on the fact that watching her smile, she did not realize it. Ellie realized that she now understood that Hannah was afraid of death, and so she wanted to dispel Hannah's fear. The girl turns to the Duchess and tells her that she is still alive. Hearing that the girl has spoken, the lady asks in surprise how she was able to speak. Ellie claims that everything will be fine and says that she agrees. Hearing this, the Duchess says that she is very glad. Then she thanks the girl and says that now she can die in peace. Hannah claims that this is good news and does not understand why she is crying and asking about it. The Duchess hugs her brother and the girl and says that he was right about the 2 days. The young mistress approaches the young lady and offers to try to share something with them. The main character gradually began to tell about herself, that her father took away her sight and voice and tried to make money off of her. Ellie explains that she can't explain in detail because she's not used to talking yet, but she knows she's been able to tell the important facts, with the exception of the Duke of Hill's story. The boy heard this and asked, screaming, how such parents could exist in their world. And his sister thought it was just madness, and then she said that she could punish her father if she wanted. At this time, the main character thought that there was no need to look at her, and she still thinks that she is fine. Hannah says that since she agreed, she will tell her more about herself, or more precisely about Countess Fevre. The young lady explains that she rarely went out in public, and the only thing that always worried her was her heart, and not all the nonsense that people like to discuss at banquets, and therefore she believes that no one will notice the substitution. Hannah says that this time she needs to attend the banquet and dance with Hardwin for one dance. Hearing this, the guy is surprised and asks her sister why him. She explains that she can't let another man hold Ellie's hand, and then reminds her that no one should know their secret. The young gentleman turns to the girl and explains that he did not say this because he does not want to dance with her. Hearing this, the sister asks her brother why he is so stupid. Ellie says that she can't dance. The Countess says that it's okay and smiles, because she thinks that she can learn, and the young gentleman says that he didn't even think about it, and says that she scared him with her seriousness. At this time they laughed as if they had forgotten all their sorrows and hardships. But the main character understands that this is not forever, and the happy time will end someday. From that day on, Hannah's condition worsened rapidly, and she lay in bed all the time, and Ella felt that she was only holding on because of her brother. For in fact, her heart should have stopped beating by now, but it could not die without passing the title to Hardwin. Hannah believed that she had to hold out until she found someone like her, and eventually, when she found the main character, her strength began to fade. The Countess asks Ellie if she will stay with her for the night, and then suggests sleeping together tonight. The young lady agreed to spend the night next to Hannah, And she thought about how she didn't know what it was like to be next to someone, but she realizes that now she knows a little about this feeling. Ellie reflects that even though they only spent a short time together, Hannah made her realize that interacting with people is really interesting. The Countess asks the girl if she has ever had a man she loved. She says she hasn't. The young lady says she's sorry because she doesn't know what it's like. Then she says she should try to fall in love because she thinks it's a wonderful feeling. Hannah says that although she was a sad countess who rarely visited social circles, she dated many guys from a young age, but she understands that she still died sooner or later. The young lady says that she did not want to be pitied, and she was interested in trying many things before leaving this world, and so she hopes that Ellie will also meet a man who will truly love her. Hearing this, the main character does not understand how to love this, and she thinks that this is when ordinary everyday life becomes special, and as if nothing else interests her. Hannah says it's okay that she doesn't know this feeling yet, and then she says that she thought Hardwin was the only one like that, but it turns out she's the same way. The Countess says that lately all her brother has done is take care of her, but she understands that she will die soon anyway, and therefore wants him to be happy without her. Ellie takes the lady by the hand and says that he will be happy. She asks in surprise why she is so sure. The girl answers that it is because she wants it. Hearing this, the young lady smiled, and then said that it was true, since she always said that her brother obeyed her. Hannah asks Ellie if she can ask her to take care of her brother Hardwin one last time. The girl says sure, and at that moment she thinks about not saying that. The young mistress says that her brother will cry a lot, and if he does it because he remembers her, she asks her to wipe his tears. She then says that Hardwin will try to look cool and not show it, but she should tell him that everything is okay. The Countess says that he is stingy with emotions, so it is sometimes difficult to understand him correctly, but she still suggests trying to do this. At this time, the young girl thought that she was saying goodbye, and then she hugs her and says that she will talk to Hardwin tomorrow. Ellie had a long dream where they were walking in the garden, holding hands under a clear sky, where Hannah was not sick, and Hardwin was smiling. And so she thinks that such a dream was very happy. The main character does not understand why. If these are just her dreams, she feels strange, even for such reasons. And at that time, it seemed to her that Hannah was disappearing forever, and she felt it. When Ellie woke up, she saw Hardwin sitting next to her on the bed. And then she explains that they were yesterday. But she noticed the expression on his face and looked at Hannah, who was lying and still sleeping. The girl turns to the Countess and touches her and asks her to open her eyes. And at that moment, she thought that her fears would be false. And with tears in her eyes, she begs the lady to wake up. Hardwin tells the girl to calm down and then tells her that Hannah has fallen into eternal sleep. He hugs the girl and starts crying, and she calms him down so that he doesn't cry. The main character sat in the room the whole time while Hardwin was busy with Hannah's funeral, and she understands that if she doesn't want to set her up, then from this day on, she must live as Hannah Favreau. Ellie thought that the Countess had gone to a good place, and she understood that the funeral had already taken place, but she didn't know what to do now. Late in the evening, Mr. Yi came into the room and asked if he could come in. The girl agreed and noticed that his face had become so haggard in just one day. Hardwin asks if they can sleep together tonight and assures her that he won't do anything to her. He explains that he's afraid to sleep tonight and therefore thinks that he definitely won't be able to do it alone. Lying in bed, the guy asks the girl if she is sleeping. The young lady replies that she can't fall asleep. Hardwin reports that he can still smell his sister in bed and it feels like she's there. He recalls that during the funeral, he wondered why his sister was born with a heart defect while he was perfectly healthy. The guy says he misses her a lot. Ellie calms him down and says, it's not up to them. He asks why people die over some nonsense. At this time, the girl looked at him and thought that he was alive. And then she touches him and says that the main thing is to remember Hannah with your heart. The young gentleman says that he understands everything and therefore thinks that they should stop crying, because as long as they continue to remember her, Hannah will live in their hearts forever. The next morning, when the main character woke up, Hardwin was nowhere to be seen. She also became curious about where he went and considered it necessary to find him. Ellie came to his room, but before she could open the door, he came out. The young gentleman says that he has a place where he wants to go, and then asks if she will join him. When they went outside, Ellie asked when it had gotten so cold, and at that moment, she thought that she needed to grab a coat. Hardwin says that because of his request, she didn't even have time to get dressed, and he doesn't want her to get sick. Then he puts his jacket on the girl. At this time, the main character does not understand when he managed to guess that she was cold, and she thinks about the fact that he is very attentive, and last time he even gave her shoes. When they came to the clearing, the main character saw many flowers. The guy says that Hannah is buried in this place. Hardwin says that he and his sister have been growing these flowers since they were little. Then he turns to Ellie and says that when she misses her sister, she can come here at any time of the day or night, at least sometimes, to remember her. The young gentleman touches the girl's hair and says that she herself said that one must remember one's sister with one's heart. Ellie thanks the guy for showing her this place and suggests that they come back together next time. A young girl approaches Hardwin and tells him she has a question. She asks what to do about the maids who saw her. The young master tells her not to worry because only 2 maids saw her, and they both knew that Hannah was sick because they have been working in this mansion for many years, and she also does not have to worry because they even helped him with the funeral, and he believes that they will help in the future. The girl thought that this meant that Hardwin trusted them, and they knew that she was a false countess. And the guy asks Ellie if she can switch to informal speech because he thinks that they are the same age and she is like a sister to him. Hearing this, the girl was surprised because she heard it so abruptly. The young gentleman says that the countess should not speak formally with her assistants. The girl smiles and says that she agrees. He suggests that she communicate more often, since he believes that this will improve her speech. At this time, Ellie thought that until yesterday he looked sad, but today he is smiling and she is happy. The maid reports that a letter has arrived for the countess. The gentleman looks at the sheet and says that he wrote it again. The girl asks what is written in it. Hardwin says that this letter is from the Duke of Hill's hearing. The girl thought that it meant something about an engagement, and when she opened it, she wanted to read it, but she did not understand what was written there. Ellie thought she needed to connect words that were familiar, and then she read that he would come because he wanted to hear directly why she had refused the engagement proposal. At this time, the girl became interested in who exactly proposed to Hannah, and she assumes that it was probably Lennon or Hayden, and she does not know who exactly the sender is. Hardwin asks Ellie what it says. The girl says that it seems he wants to come, and at that moment she thought that Lennon wants to come in person, and she didn't even think that they would see each other so soon. The girl thought that nothing would happen if they met, but she thought that suddenly he might see Ellie and not Countess Favre. The young gentleman looked at the girl and saw that she was worried and asked if she had any business with the Duke of Hills. At this time, the main character thought that she tried not to show it, but he apparently noticed. The young gentleman says that if she does not want to talk, he does not force her, and then he says that she must simply remember that she must be different from that Ellie, since she is now Countess Favre. Hardwin claims that no one can know the truth. At that moment, she thought that he was right, and she had promised Hannah. The young gentleman understands that even though they spent little time together, she does not want to break her promise, and he believes that now she is Hannah Favre and no one will be able to catch her. The young gentleman asks her what she thinks she should do first. She thinks she should learn the basics of etiquette first. Hardwin insists that she needs to practice her speech first. The girl agrees and asks when they can start. A week later, the main character practiced with Hardwin for 6 days. They did not stop talking, and so her speech became clearer and more confident, and at the same time, in addition to speaking practice, she also learned the basic etiquette necessary for a nobleman. Hardwin cries since that day, but it was also hard to catch him smiling. The girl wondered if the young gentleman would ever come to his senses, and she thought that talking about Hannah might cheer him up. Ellie asks the guy if he's ever been in love, and remembers that Hannah said he's never been in love. Hearing this, the guy says that she told him too much about him, and then says that it's true because he just wasn't interested. Hardwin asks the girl if she has ever been in love. She replies that she has never been in love because she has never had the opportunity to love someone. The young gentleman says that the Duke of Hills will be arriving soon and asks if she can handle it. The girl replies that everything is fine, and at that moment she thought that she had hoped that Lennon would not show up. But he did. The young lady reflects on the fact that no one can stop the Duke. And when she looked out the window, she saw him. Suddenly, Ellie realizes she's with Lennon, makes eye contact, and doesn't know what to do. Then she decides she needs to calm down because she's not the Ellie he knows. The young lady remembers that Hardwin said he would meet Lennon, and so she thinks she can only wait. However, she is getting nervous because Lennon is still there, and her throat is dry. Ellie opened the door and wanted to take a look, but remembers that Hardwin told her to keep her head down. And when she went out into the corridor, she became curious about where the maids had disappeared to. And so she thinks that it is dangerous to go to the dining room and decides to go back to the room. Suddenly, Ellie heard a familiar voice, and Lennon addressing her and calling her Ellie. And then he grabs her hand and looks at her. At this time, the main character thought that if she does not answer normally, now then he will find out that she is Ellie, and she believes that she can handle it. The girl abruptly takes her hand away, and then assures him that he was mistaken. And at that moment, he thought that she was no longer that mute Ellie. The young lady reflects that it is a little encouraging that Lennon, who kept a poker face even when her secret was revealed, now looks at her like that, and therefore believes that she should move in this direction, since she is now the Countess of Fèvre. The young lady asks if he is Lennon, who was supposed to visit them today. Then she apologizes for not introducing herself. Suddenly, the girl heard a question about why she went out. Hardwin says he told her to wait for him until he came. Hearing this, the main character apologizes. Mr. Fèvre turns to Lennon and says that he ended their conversation a little abruptly. The Duke apologizes and explains that she simply reminded him of someone. The main character says that she is Hannah Fèvre and asks for permission to take her leave. Hardwin would see her because of her poor health. Lennon says it's a coincidence that they ended up meeting and thinks it's definitely fate. Then he asks her if she'd like to have tea with him. At this time, the girl thought that she would really like to refuse, but she believes that if she avoids Lennon now, he will become even more persistent in seeking their meeting. Ellie says she agrees. If it doesn't take too long, sitting together at the table, the main character does not understand whether the Duke will constantly be boring into her with his gaze, and therefore she believes that she needs to focus on completely dispelling Lennon's suspicions. The girl believes that she should behave like a noblewoman, not a commoner. The gentleman apologizes for not introducing himself and then reveals that he is the Duke of Lennon Hills. Ellie said that it was nice to meet you. And at that time, she thought that, as expected from a nobleman, this atmosphere was completely different from hers. She thought it was strange because she had the feeling that he wanted to catch her in a lie. The main character thought that it was as if he was telling her that no matter how hard she tried to look like an aristocrat in the end, she was just an ordinary commoner, Ellie. Hardwin turns to the gentleman and reminds him that, as he has already said, his sister has severe bronchial diseases, and therefore she cannot talk much, and he hopes for his understanding. Lennon assures that of course they will not talk much, and then says that the conversation can continue after the Countess gets better, and asks if he can help her with this. The Duke asks to be allowed to visit her more often. After the gentleman left, the main character thought that she felt like a hurricane had passed, and then she asks the guy if he is not in the mood, because she thinks that he is angry with her because she did not wait for him in the room. Hardwin says it's swollen. The girl doesn't understand what he's talking about and asks about it. He explains that his wrist is swollen. She looks at her hand and says that it is indeed swollen. The young gentleman tells her that he really doesn't like Lennon Hills. Then he asks why he grabbed her hand so hard. The guy takes the first aid kit and then applies the bandage to his hand and says that it will help reduce the swelling, and offers to support him a little. Hardwin says that the next time someone tries to grab her wrist, she should tell him that it is very rude to grab a woman's wrist without permission. Then he asks if she has to say that. The girl heard this and smiled, but he insisted that she not laugh since he was speaking seriously, and suggested that she repeat it. Elle says it is impolite to grab a woman's wrist without permission. The boy asks if he can pet her. The girl nods her head again and thinks that it has become strange for her to nod her head in response to a question. The main character remembers that just a few months ago, she had no motivation to live, and she didn't want to eat and didn't want to do anything. And so she believes that she simply existed, and her life has completely changed since she came to Countess Fèvre. The young lady reflects on the fact that she wanted to speak and wanted to repay Hannah for saving her, and she also wanted Hardwin to be happy, and that's why she only now feels like she's alive. Ellie thanked the guy and thought about how grateful she was to him for taking care of her swollen wrist and for making her feel alive. The guy looks at the girl and says that she smiles so brightly and then leaves. She asks why he is leaving, and he says that she needs to rest. When the young lady was left alone, she thought that the young master felt burdened by her gratitude. The next day, when they came to the meadow with flowers again, the young lady said that if you think about it, there was still a lot she didn't know about him. Hardwin asks her what she's interested in, and then gives her his jacket so she won't get cold. The girl asks when his birthday is. He replies that he was born in November on the first snowy day. Ellie says it suits him. The guy asks in surprise what exactly. She explains that his hair looks like snow. The young gentleman asks when the girl was born. She answers that in March on the last snowy day. Hardwin says her hair also resembles snow and claims that they were born on the first and last snow days. She asks when it will snow this year. The guy says he doesn't know, but usually he and his sister watch the first snowflakes together. The girl asks if she can take on this role this year. He replies that if she doesn't mind, he would be glad. Unfortunately, the quiet days did not last long, because the next day Lennon dropped by again for a visit. Seeing him, the main character asks why he came, and then claims that he will not be able to help her with her illness. The young gentleman asks why she thinks so, and then informs her that he has brought good tea from the West. The young lady thanks him for his kindness, and at that moment she thought that she still lacks breath to speak without stopping. Lennon says he thinks she still finds it hard to talk. She says it's okay, but he might not come as often. And then she thinks she'd like him to turn his attention away from the Countess of Fevre. Hannah says she's leaving already. Hearing this, he grabs her hand and tells her to wait. The girl screaming says that grabbing a woman's wrist without permission is impolite. And then he takes his hand back. Lennon apologizes and explains that he didn't want to leave her so soon and asks if she would give him a little more time. The young lady agrees and offers to continue their conversation. He thanks her for agreeing to talk to him. The maid informs that she has made them tea again, and at this time the main character notices that she is smiling much more than usual, and therefore she thinks that she should not dwell on it. The young lady turns to the guest and offers to tell her why he decided to propose, and at that time she thought that he had already received benefits after Ellie disappeared and does not understand what else he needs. Lennon says that something happened in his childhood, and he explains that his younger brother had one assistant his age, and every time they saw each other, they discussed something. They were about the same age, so they found topics for conversation. However, one day his brother lost his jewelry, and he was so angry that he immediately raised a fuss. Of course, the assistant was blamed for the theft, but Lennon is sure that it was some kind of misunderstanding. Hearing this, the main character does not understand why he is suddenly telling her this. The young master reports that he was afraid to side with the servant because he was young and did not want to upset his father. The girl asks what he did. Lennon replies that he kept quiet, even though he felt terrible, and a few days later he decided to help the servant. But it was too late, because Hayden, his brother, finished him off. The Duke says that since then his brother has become a cruel man. Hearing this, the girl recalls that she thought that death was a common thing for him and believes that he became like that after this incident. Lennon says he felt guilty at the time, but it bothered him for a long time because he thinks he should have stood up for him earlier, and then he met a girl named Ellie. The young gentleman says that she was a commoner who could not speak properly. The girl's father saw her only as a tool for making money, and then he told her what the situation was and how best to handle it. The guy says he was very happy when she could rely on him, until at some point she ran away. Lennon says he generally has a hard time being kind to others, and the reason he proposed was because they were similar. Hearing this, the young lady asks if he means to say that he proposed to her because she resembles her. He replies that this is the sincere truth and asks if it is offensive for the Countess to hear this. The young lady says he is right because she is hurt. Lennon apologizes and says he will not bother her again from tomorrow. Hearing this, the main character does not understand why he changed his mind so abruptly. The young gentleman says that in this way he wants to show her his sincerity and nothing more, and then thanks her for listening to him and says that he is already leaving. After the Duke has left, Hardwin comes into the ladies' room and asks if the conversation went well. Then he asks what happened. The young lady smiled back and said that it was fine because he would not come again. Hearing this, the young gentleman said that it was strange for him, but he was glad. Ellie saw Lennon talking to the maid and thought that he was the kind of person who gets along well with people, and she knew he would do anything to find out who she was. The main character understands that apparently the maid who knows her secret has fallen in love with Lennon, and she also assumes that maybe Lennon seduced this maid. Ellie tells Hardin that she has a bad feeling about this. He reassures her and tells her not to worry. Then he tells her that he is listening to her and assures her that he would never hurt her. The young lady reports that she thinks Lennon is trying to seduce the maid, and it is the maid who knows she is not Hannah. The young gentleman heard this and said that he thought she could be relied upon. Then he asked if he could send her away from here for a while and send her to another province for a year. Give her enough money to live on and provide her with a place to stay. Ellie says Lennon will understand because she thinks he has enough power and money. Then she turns to the guy and says she can handle it herself because she thinks that's what Hannah would do. Hardwin says he has a strange feeling. She asks if it's bad. The young master replies that, on the contrary, he feels she reminded him of Hannah's good qualities because she doesn't try to escape and wants to handle everything on her own. A young lady asks if she looks like her sister. The guy doesn't understand what she's talking about and claims that it has nothing to do with it. Then he says that she looks nothing like his sister. The main character apologizes and says that she will not talk like that anymore. He asks her in surprise what she is talking about and claims that he sees her in her and not Hannah. Hearing this, the girl asks in surprise, why? Because she thinks they are not alike. He says they are, but that's all. The young gentleman turns to the lady and says that she has been Ellie to him from the very beginning. When the girl was alone in the room, the maid was cleaning her at that time. The maid said that she would pour her some hot tea. Hearing this, the girl thought about what she told Madeline, what her name was, and then thanked her. The young lady asks the maid if she is having a hard time. She replies that everything is fine and thanks for her concern. At this time, the main character thinks that Hannah would do this. The girl believes that she has two plans, and the first is to establish contact with Madeline, because she does not think that Madeline would easily reveal the secret to Lennon, that everything can change, and therefore she believes that she needs to lure her to her side. And the second plan is to deal with Lennon face to face, and so we will meet with him and convince him that she is not Ellie. The girl understands that this is very risky, but she believes that she must be the perfect Hannah. The main character does not understand why the hell Lennon is looking for her, and she thinks that if he has exposed her, will he then admit his true intentions? Ellie is lost in her thoughts when suddenly she hears a knock on the door and asks, "Who is there?" Hardwin says it is him and asks if she can come in. The girl agrees. The young gentleman says that he is just worried and he thinks that it will not be easy with Lennon. Hearing this, the main character thought that even though she said that she would cope with everything, he still continues to worry about her. The young lady says she wants to be friends with Madeline because she thinks the more they communicate, the less likely she is to tell Lennon about their secret. Hearing this, the guy says that she has a good idea, and then he tells her that when Madeline was still a child, she was almost sold to a brothel, but Hannah saved her, and being a countess took care of her as an older sister. Soon Madeline Sloppy gained a little weight and finally began to smile very brightly, and so she became faithful to Hannah. Hearing this, the girl now understands why Hardwin believes Madeline and thinks that she feels trustworthy. At that moment, when you think that no one can help you, when you feel the darkness consuming you, you suddenly see someone's hand reaching out to you like a ray of light, and it feels like a moment, like a blessing. Hardwin says he's not sure if he can trust Madeline, but he thinks it would be good for her to be friends with her. The girl sees that he's sleepy and asks if he's falling asleep. The guy says he's sleepy. Ellie asks if he wants to lie down with her. The young gentleman, surprised, asks what she is talking about. The young lady asks, "What's wrong with that?" Then she says that they spent the night together last time, and she says that she didn't mind him sleeping with her. The guy says that he will stay. Lying in bed, the main character thought about how Madeline also had a difficult childhood, and she remembers that she and her sister were in a similar situation. Ellie turns to the guy and says that she has a request. And she understands that it is a bit impudent, but she does not even know if she can forgive something like that. He asks what she wants and offers to talk. A young lady asks if they can find her sister. The girl says she thinks her father sold her sister for marriage. Hearing this, the guy was surprised and asked if it was true that her dad sold her sister. She answered that it was true, and then she said that if he made such a face, wrinkles would definitely appear. Hardwin says he doesn't want to discuss it anymore and is glad she didn't get to them too late. Ellie agrees with him, and at that moment, she thought that she also thinks that she is lucky to be in this place, and she is very glad that she met him and his sister. The young gentleman offers to tell her anything that can help him find her sister. The young lady reports that Isabel is now along with a young man in good clothes. The guy says that he will definitely find her sister and therefore will allow her to live in this mansion. Ellie happily asks how she can repay him for helping her with this. He says he doesn't need anything. Then he says that if she really wants to thank him, she should tell him about her relationship with Lennon. The main character says that as she mentioned earlier, she had to work with Lennon because of her father, and then she says that she can't tell the details because it's a secret. The girl believes that Lennon is looking for her, fearing that his secret will become known. Hardwin says he thought the Duke was looking for her because he liked her, and knows that's not true. Ellie claims that Lennon doesn't love her and believes it's more like sympathy and curiosity. The young lady says that the Duke did not treat her like a commoner. He was always tactful and wanted her to talk to him. The girl thought that even if she confessed to him who she was, he might even help her, and so she thought that maybe she was afraid of him for nothing. Ellie asks the guy why she doesn't tell Lennon who she is. He says she can't, because he doesn't know if he's a good person or a bad person, but he thinks the fewer people who know the truth, the better. The young lady agrees with him. He smiles and says that she is obedient to him. The girl says that it is because she listens to him. Suddenly, the guy says he's leaving, asks what's wrong, and wonders what she did wrong. Hardwin explains that it's not that. Then he says there's a banquet at the Imperial Palace soon. The young gentleman tells her that she must practice dancing with him starting tomorrow. And he explains that he completely forgot to tell her about it, and then he leaves and bids her good night. The young woman lay down on the bed and thought that he had already left, but the bed was still warm, and she would like to fall asleep in this place today. The next morning, Madeline says she hasn't said this before, but she is very glad that Lady came here. The maid believes that this way she can at least somehow thank the Countess since she has done a lot for her. A week has passed since the main character decided to befriend Madeline, and during this time, she has already learned a little more about her. Madeline came to the Countess's house at the age of 5, and this year she will be 15. And this girl lived in this house for 10 years. The more Ellie looked at Madeline, the more familiar she seemed to her. And she reminded her of her sister, whom her father had given away somewhere, and remembered that it had happened 10 years ago. When the main character asked Madeline to remember her childhood, she said that she didn't remember anything, and probably because she was shocked by the fact that they wanted to sell her. Ellie thanks the maid for keeping her secret. Then she tells her that she believes her. The maid says that she will help her until the day when Hardwin receives the title of Count, and then asks that if she is free today, she asks permission to go to the city. Since she needs to go on personal business, Madeline leaves and suggests not to worry, as she will be back soon. Ellie doesn't understand what kind of personal affairs a maid could have, and then asks if she can take her with her. The maid asks if she'll be okay. The mistress replies that she will be okay because she thinks it won't be for long. Sitting in the carriage, the main character thought that this was the first walk since she moved in with the Countess, and she was also interested in everything, whether it would be okay without Hardwin. Madeline went outside, and then the lady said that they would see each other and ran off somewhere. At this time, Ellie thought that she was more worried about Madeline than Lennon, who had not come for a whole week, because she thought that he was not the kind of person who would stand silently aside. The main character believes that she needs to find out what Madeline's personal affairs are, and she decides to follow her. As she walked down the street, the girl thought that this reminded her of how she had run away from her father. She wondered if he was still looking for her. Ellie thought that she needed to stop thinking about it, but suddenly she collided with a man and her hat almost fell off. But the gentleman grabbed the hat in time. The girl saw Lennon, and he turns to her and says that she needs to be more careful, and then asks if she is here on business. The young gentleman says that it is dangerous to travel alone without maids and knights. She replies that she was about to return, and at that moment he thought that she needed to go for a slow When the main character looked outside, she saw that the maid was no longer there. Lennon says they met by chance and asks why she sighs like that. The lady asks the gentleman what his business is here on. The Duke says he wants to find someone, and if she doesn't mind, he'll walk her to her carriage. At that moment, she thinks that since Madeline has disappeared into the crowd, she should at least keep an eye on Lennon. Then she agrees. Ellie asks the gentleman if he had a meeting planned with someone. He says no, and the girl thinks about what that means. He wasn't going to meet Madeline. The young lady asks who he wanted to find if it is not a secret. He replies that if she is interested, he will tell. The Duke asks if she remembers their last conversation when he said he was looking for a girl like her. Ellie says she remembers Lennon says he's trying to find her because he really wants to meet her, and he spent all his searches and a lot of money on her, and finally found an eyewitness to the girl he's looking for with silver hair. The young gentleman reports that about a month ago, an eyewitness saw two women with silver hair getting into a carriage. And furthermore, on the very day he saw them, the girl he is looking for disappeared. Lennon says he understands, so there aren't many options. The young lady asks what conclusion he has come to. The Duke answers that one of the two women is the one he needs. And after that, he began to look for the carriage they left in, and he interrogated all the coachmen in the capital, and then he asks if the lady is interested in knowing the results. The young gentleman says that if so, then he will tell her the next time they meet. The main character claims that she is not interested. He says, who knows, and maybe they will meet again. Hearing this, the girl does not understand why he is so obsessed with her. Ellie asks to be allowed to ask him one more question, and asks why he is looking for her, and also wonders if it could be because she suddenly disappeared or because he likes her. Lennon replies that it's more like he feels like he's been deprived of something. And then he explains that he's not a very good person and that he has terrible desires. And every time he does something reckless to satisfy his desires, he suddenly becomes empty. The Duke says that after meeting a girl named Ellie, this emptiness disappeared, and he remembers that she even consoled him, so he liked being around her. The young gentleman says that he wants to find her and do something for her, and he thinks that he hasn't even decided yet whether he feels friendship sympathy or maybe love for her. Lennon says he wants to know first if she's safe, and he wants to talk to her again. The young lady asks if he misses that girl. The gentleman replies that he does. Hearing this, the main character thought that she didn't even know that she was important to him. However, she assumes that he is not sincerely missing her. Ellie says she hopes he finds this girl. Then she takes his hand. The Countess asks him to think about why she decided to suddenly disappear. And then she says that if he misses her, it means that she is valuable to him. And at that moment, she thinks that he should not complicate the task and look for her. And then she says that she is already leaving. Lennon turns to Hannah and says he wants to meet her. The lady says she will talk to Hardwin about it. Suddenly, the main character heard a familiar voice. The Labrador asks where she disappeared so suddenly and at least knows how long he was looking for her. Seeing him, the girl does not understand what he is doing here and thinks that she needs to leave before he notices. But suddenly, the girl's hat falls. The guy looks at her in surprise and asks if she is the owner. And then he stands next to her and examines her from all sides. The young lady says that this is rude and suggests that he move away. Hearing this, the guy is surprised and asks if she is talking. Ellie asks what he's doing. The Labrador kneels down, and at that moment, she thought about him being suspended and maybe being brought back into service. And she couldn't even imagine that they could be together. And then the lady looked at the Duke and thought that it would be better if he stopped looking like that and helped her. The knight asks the mistress where she has been all this time, and also wonders why she pretends not to know him, and asks what he did wrong. The Labrador suggests telling him, because he will definitely improve, and also asks her not to ignore him, and begs her not to leave him. At this time, the main character thought that this was even worse than when she first met Lennon, but she understands that she will not be able to hide her identity from the Labrador, because she believes that he remembers the smell of his mistress. Ellie turns to the guy and says that it's a secret, and it's not nice to cry in front of a lady he's seeing for the first time, and so she thinks that he must be confused because she looks so much like his friend. The lady says that she is not the hostess, but Hannah Fevre, and says that if he stops crying, she will forgive him for his behavior. Lennon says he thinks the night was very rude, and so he asks for forgiveness. The lady says it's okay and says she has to go. Sitting in the carriage, the protagonist ponders whether she did the right thing. Since she did not say that it was her, however, she believes that her actions actually confirmed that she is Ellie. The girl doesn't understand how she could have ignored his desperate voice, and so she just hopes that she did everything right. When Ellie returned to the mansion, she lay down on the sofa, and lost in her thoughts, she did not even notice how Hardwin came up to her to cover her up. The young master apologizes because he didn't want to wake her up. The young lady says it's okay, and then asks why he came so late. The guy says he wanted to ask her what color she likes. She says purple. Hearing this, he sighs with relief and says, he's glad. The girl asks why he's glad. Hardwin says that in 2 days, there will be a banquet and her dresses. But suddenly a maid comes into the room and says that a man has come to the countess, who called the lady mistress. Madeline reports that he said the countess must meet him. Then she asks the lady what she will do. Hearing this, the main character thought that she had never even imagined that he would think of this. And then she tells the maid to take this man to the living room and to tell him that she will be there soon. Hearing this, Hardwin was surprised, and then turning to Ellie, he says that she is called the mistress and therefore asks if she has any strange hobbies, and they also ask if she has raised anyone. The young lady claims that she did not raise him, and most likely believes that he is a foundling, who was one of her clients, and she accidentally crossed paths with him today when she was going out into the city. Hearing this, the young gentleman asks in surprise if she was in town. The girl says that she had to, and then asks for forgiveness. She says that she will take responsibility for this, and explains that he is different from Lennon. Hardwin says he understands her, and then asks why he calls her mistress. The girl suggests going to the living room first, and then she says that this is confidential information, and at that time she thought that Hardwin was not disappointed that she did not answer the question, and thinks that suddenly he can turn away from her. The young gentleman touches the girl's hair and tells her not to worry because he is not disappointed. He thinks she has said enough. Ellie explains that if anything happened, he would quickly reveal her identity. When the girl came to the night, he looked at her in surprise, and Hardwin says that he is not a dog and asks why the owner. The girl says that perhaps he really is a dog and tells the Labrador to sit down. The young gentleman says he is Hardwin Favor, still protects Ellie, and the knight says that his name is Labrador Lassens. And since he is a knight of the Duke of Hills, Ellie is considered his mistress. Hearing this, the main character thought that he was talking as if she was part of the Duke's family. Hardwin says they can't give away all the details, but Ellie is now replacing his sister Hannah. Labrador says he understands. The gentleman asks if he plans to tell anyone about this, and even if he has such thoughts, he suggests that he answer them honestly anyway. The knight kneels and tells the girl that she does not have to answer to him, and he will not ask why she became Hannah. Then he shows her the ring and offers to let him be with her. The Labrador says he's willing to swear on his dead mother's thing that he'll never betray her. Then he says that before her mistress, everyone thought he was weird, but he knows how amazing she is. The knight asks why he would betray her, because he believes that he will never meet a person like her again. At this time, the main character thought that she does not know who the Labrador loves her or her hands, but she is sure of one thing, that he will never betray her. The girl turns to Hardwin and says that everything is fine. He says that he cannot fully trust him because Sir Labrador Duke of Hill's knight, and that means that he is somehow connected with Lennon. The knight says that he said everything correctly because he serves him. The young master says that then he could notice that his servant came here, and in the end, he can reveal their secret. The Labrador suggests not to worry about this, because when he met the owner during the day, Lennon was there too, and he knows that he really likes the owner. The knight says that while the mistress assured him that she was not Ellie Lennon, he looked at them suspiciously. He then asks if they know how he can be possessed, and therefore believes that he will not stop trying to find them. Labrador says he's sure Lennon would have thought it strange if he hadn't come here today. Hearing this, the main character wondered if he was a stupid dog, and she realized that she almost said it out loud. The guy says that since it's related to her, he's thought it through very carefully. The young gentleman says that he's still not ready to trust him completely. However, if he does something for him, at least try. And then he says that he should keep an eye on Lennon Hills. Hardwin says he must report back to them as far as the Duke knows it's Ellie, and also be sure to report back if he starts spying on her himself. At this time, the girl thought that it was not entirely beneficial for the knight to keep an eye on his Duke. The Labrador says he agrees and asks when he should start. The girl thinks he is an obvious exception, and the young gentleman asks where his knightly pride has gone. The Labrador says he cannot serve two people at once, and the man to whom he has already sworn allegiance. And then he touches the lady's feet and says, "It is she, Miss Ellie." The boy says he can't fulfill his knightly duties by betraying her. Then he says he's all hers. The Labrador says he wasn't attached to Lennon from the start and just wanted to watch him up close. The knight says that he also has a request for Hardwin, and then says that if he does his job, then please appoint him as the Countess's personal knight, as he believes that he is ideal for the position. Hearing this, the main character says that everything is fine because she thinks that the Labrador will not bite her, and at that time, she thought that he would kiss her at most. And then she says that it is already late, and it is time for him to go back, and she suggests meeting in a week. Hardwin suggests keeping an eye on Lennon, and then they'll see whether they can trust him or not. Ellie stroked the guy's hair. Mr. Ferv says that it's late and it's time for him to go back. At this time, the girls thought that Hardwin was very angry, and probably because she not only went out without asking, but also told the Labrador who she really is. And to top it off, she stroked his head. Ellie turns to the young gentleman and insists that she will never act alone again. Then she explains that she had to go out because of Togo to follow Madeleine. The girl says that she eventually met Lennon, who also promised to tell her about Ellie the next time they met. Hardwin asks Ellie to answer his question exactly, and asks if he is still her guardian. She says yes. The guy says he will tell her it's like a guardian and asks her to be careful. The lady asks if he is telling Labrador, and he literally swore allegiance to her. He says he is not asking her to trust him completely, but the girl asks if it is possible to trust him a little. The young gentleman takes the girl by the hand, then throws her on the bed and lies down on top of her. He asks how much she trusts him, and then asks if she knows what he is thinking about right now. At this time, the main character thought that she trusted Hardwin more than anyone else. However, she cannot imagine what he is thinking about now. The guy says that no one knows what's on someone's mind. Then he suggests that we shouldn't trust people. He sits down by the bed and apologizes because he thinks he went too far. The young master swears that he will never do that again, and then tells Ellie to be careful with people because he thinks that not all people are good. Suddenly, the main character touches the guy and asks what about him. She says that she was able to talk to him again, and he gave her shoes, and she wonders if he is not a good person. Hardwin is surprised by the question, and then says that he scared her 3 minutes ago. The girl says that she doesn't know anything, because he is nice, and that's why she wasn't scared. Ellie claims that she understood so clearly what he wanted to convey to her, and then she touches his hand and says that everything is fine. Lady asks if he has ever been burned because of trusting someone. The gentleman recalls that when their father passed away, they had an uncle who was very kind to them, but in reality, he just wanted to get the title of Count, and he trusted him except for his sister, and he could confide only in him. Ellie says that she believed her father too, and could not even imagine that he wanted to take away her voice and sight, and so she understands his feelings. The girl turns to the guy and offers to sit closer to her because she wants to hug him. She hugs the guy and offers him to trust her, and then she says that she wants him to reciprocate her trust. At this time, the main character became interested in how much time it would take for them to be able to completely trust each other. The next day, Ellie looked at the guy and asked how long he would stand like this. Then she suggested that he sit down. Hardwin apologizes for yesterday and explains that he's been thinking about it all morning. The girl tells him to forget it since she's fine. Then she asks if he came for a reason. The young master explains that they were rehearsing a dance yesterday for tomorrow's banquet. Hearing this, the female lead thinks that she doesn't know if it can be called a dance because she kept stepping on Hardwin's feet. Mr. Ferv says that they need a dress rehearsal and says that he has also prepared a dress for her for tomorrow and therefore suggests that she change into it and go out. The girl agrees. When the main character of the dress department looked at herself in the mirror and thought that it was very beautiful. And at that time, she thought that if Hannah were alive, this dress would be meant for her. and she thinks that she would be so beautiful in this dress. Ellie thought that for her sake, she had to play her role perfectly. The girl came to the door of Hardwin's office and asked if she could come in. And when she saw the guy, she was very surprised because he was dressed nicely. The young gentleman asks if she has arrived yet. And at this point, the girl herself did not even notice how she was staring. And then he asks how she turns to him and asks if she looks like Hannah. Hardwin says she looks like herself, but thinks people who don't know her will think she's Hannah. Then she says the dress suits her. Ellie asks if he chose it himself. He answers that he did. At this point, the girl remembers that he asked what color she liked, and now she understands why he felt relieved then. The young lady thanks the guy and claims that she likes the dress. He says that this is good news for him, and therefore suggests that they start rehearsing the dance. The young gentleman asks if she remembers, and then tells her that he will lead, and she will just have to follow him. And so he tells her to relax and concentrate. At this point, the main character thought that it was a little strange for her because she was doing better today. Well, suddenly she stepped on his foot again and asks if they could rest a little. Ellie thought about how she was bothered by his fingers on her back and thought that it was making it difficult for her to concentrate on the dance. The girl doesn't understand why she feels so excited. At this time, Lennon had a dream that he met Ellie, but it was very dark then, and he did not understand where he was. And when he woke up, he realized that when it began, he began to constantly think about her. Lennon liked casual relationships. Sincere feelings require responsibility, which is a burden to him. His inner owner said that he should have everything he wanted, with his perfect looks, his abilities, and his family's wealth. This wasn't a difficult goal for Lennon. However, he had a problem when Ellie came into his life. And then, for the first time in a long time, Lennon's heart began to beat faster. The servant tells the master that everything was as he thought, and Sir Labrador went to see Countess Fèvre. He asks if he knows what they talked about. The servant replies that they talked inside, and therefore, unfortunately, he knows nothing. At this time, the young gentleman thought that Hannah Fèvre rarely shows her face in social circles, and therefore all sorts of rumors are going around about her. And they say that she is ugly, and the people who make up these rumors are much worse than those about whom they gossip. He had no intention of getting married at first, but the proposals just kept coming, and so Lennon would rather marry someone whose vision of marriage would match his, and he wanted to marry a girl who wouldn't love him. And he thought Hannah Fèvre was that girl. The young gentleman realizes that she resembles Ellie, and that's why he thought that proposing to her would be a good idea. He realizes that she didn't give any reason for her refusal, but at that time he was upset because he couldn't find Ellie. Hills decided to go to the Countess and personally ask her why she rejected the offer. Mr. Fèvre said it was because of illness, and he came out instead of her. He said that Sister had bronchial asthma, and she would not be suitable for the role of his wife, and since she still could not speak properly, that is why he came in her place. The young gentleman says that he hopes for his understanding, and when he left, he thought that nothing would work out, and he was sorry because she seemed to him a very interesting person. Lennon thought that at that moment, he would never forget. When the foot frozen in mid-step, the slightly bowed head, and the beautiful appearance combined with silver hair to the waist. He remembers that this girl looked like Ellie, and when the young gentleman came closer to the lady and called her Ellie, she assured him that he was mistaken. And when the brother asked Hannah why she went out, he was once again convinced that she was Countess Fèvre. And he thought that he was mistaken, because unlike Ellie she can speak, but he still wonders how they can be so similar. From that day on, Lennon began investigating how Ellie and Hannah could be connected. When he scoured the capital, he managed to find out about two women with silver hair getting into a carriage together. A woman entered the gentleman's office and asked what was going on and why he didn't come to her. He wondered what brought his mother to him. The lady says that she hasn't seen him at all lately, and that's why she is very upset about it. The guy doesn't understand what she's talking about and asks about it, and then explains that he was just busy. She asks if he has a new woman. She also asks how long he will last this time, for a week and half a month. The Duke says he doesn't know and is wondering how it will turn out. The lady says he shouldn't hurt her too much, and if he continues like this, it will hurt him one day. The guy claims that he will never be in pain, and he thinks that he knows how to live without feeling pain better than anyone. And then it is announced that today he will go early. Walking down the corridor, the Duke thought that before he would have been angry with this woman, but now he had no time for that. Suddenly he sees the guy and asks why his sweet little brother decided to pretend not to notice him. Hayden says that if he wants a fight, he doesn't need it. The older brother says he doesn't want to fight. He just wanted to say hello. Then he asks if he doesn't like that he and his mother get along well. Hayden tells Lennon Hills to shut up, and the guy with black hair says he knew his mom was all for that kind of relationship, and then suggests he watch his language next time unless he wants to end up a servant. At this time, Hayden thought that he was right, but even after such words he could not hate him. And this angered him even more, because he loved the one who did not value him at all, and he thought that he would like Ellie to comfort him now. The young gentleman reflects on the fact that he does not know where she disappeared to, and if he had known that she would disappear so suddenly, he would have persuaded her to stay and would have been gentler with her. Hayden realizes that she has consoled him many times, and he couldn't even do anything for her. And then he puts his hand on the gun and thinks that he is pathetic. The guy takes the weapon and thinks that it is better for him to fall into eternal sleep. But suddenly he saw a letter of recommendation from her father, in which it was written that the mute Ellie is only capable of listening to him attentively, and if he entrusts her with his secrets, she will not be able to tell them to anyone. Hayden wondered why his father was offering such strange services, and he realizes that he didn't even think about what was wrong with this woman. He just went to her father and signed a contract with him, and so the guy thinks he's out of his mind. Even though he knows it cost a lot of money, he decided it was worth it, and he knows that if he commits suicide, he won't need the money anyway. The young gentleman thought that no matter how stupid it was to confess his secret, he couldn't help himself at the first meeting, and he told her that he liked men and felt relieved. Hayden thought it might be best to continue seeing Ellie, since he felt so much better after their meetings. But one day the young gentleman met her under strange circumstances, and when he saw the girl with his brother, he became curious about why they were together, and he assumed that he could also be Ellie's client. Hayden understands that a brother like him also has secrets, and he also wants to know them very much. And so he thinks that if he destroys him and becomes the head of the family, he can compensate for his pathetic feelings. However, the young master's decision changed, and he wondered if there was some medicine that would make her able to speak. And at that time, he thought that he couldn't allow this idiot to use her. Hayden tells the girl that he will help her escape from here, and he understands that even if she was not going to tell Lennon's secret, he would still help her. However, the next day, she simply ran away without even thanking him. Ellie suddenly disappeared. The young gentleman does not understand why and thinks that he only wanted to help her, and he also wondered if he would never see her again. And at that time, he thought that if it were not for her, he would have committed suicide. Hayden decides he must find her, and he will spare no expense to do so. He has tried to find similar girls, but none of them are even close to the real Ellie. And so he still has no idea where she is. When the young gentleman entered the pub, he saw Ellie's father and wondered how much he had drunk. And since this man couldn't even sit, when the man came to his senses, the gentleman asked where Ellie was. The father, surprised, asked who he was. The guy answered that he was Hayden Hills. Hearing this, the man asks in surprise what brought him here at such a late hour. He asks if the father found his daughter. The man says not to even remind him, because he does not understand how she could do this to him. And then he claims that because of her, he quit his job because he trusted his daughter. At this time, the young gentleman thought that he smelled so strongly of fumes, and he didn't even try to find her, and thought that he was only interested in drinking. Suddenly, the guy grabs the man by the throat and tells him not to dare say his name with that filthy mouth. Then he uses a knife to cut off a piece of his finger. At this point, the man falls to the floor and screams loudly in pain. Hayden suggests that he calm down, since no one has ever died from a severed finger. The young gentleman claims that if he lets him down again, he will cut off all the rest. And when he leaves the pub, he thinks about what else he will get. Hardwin sits down on the floor and says he needs to rest. The girl asks if she has disappointed him too much with her skills. Then he apologizes for having to deal with her. The guy asks who gets it right the first time, and explains that it didn't work out for him the first time either. The young gentleman asks the girl if she believed him. She answers that she did, and he is surprised that she believed him so immediately because he thinks that she dances very well. Hardwin asks if she was embarrassed by his words. Then he says that seriously, she should have praised him too, and he thinks it's better late than never. Hearing this, the girl does not understand what exactly she should say, and then asks to let her repeat his words as a training exercise. The guy asks the girl in surprise if she is making fun of him now. She doesn't understand what he is talking about and why she is making fun of him and asking about it. He explains that he just thinks he expected too much from her. And then he apologizes and explains that he was joking. Hardwin asks if she's so serious about Lennon and about the meeting tomorrow. She agrees with him, and then she thinks that even though she misunderstood him, it seems she doesn't need to fix the situation. The young gentleman claims that he will protect her, Ellie, and therefore suggests that she not worry. Hearing this, the girl thanked him. The young gentleman says it's going to rain soon because his knees are hurting. Ellie looks out the window and says, "It looks like it because the sky is overcast." And then the main character asks in surprise if it is too early for him, because she thinks he is only 17. He asks if there are any general rules for why his knees can hurt at this age. Ellie looked at the boy and asked if he was okay, and wondered if he was afraid of thunder. The young gentleman said that he was very afraid of thunderstorms. Hearing this, the girl hugs the guy and tells him not to worry because she is next to him. And the main character tells the guy that now he really does look like a 17-year-old and believes that before this, he behaved like an adult. Hardwin says that he is very frightened by this sound and is afraid to tell the truth. Sleeping alone. The young lady asks if he wants them to sleep together. Hearing this, the guy is surprised and asks how she can say such things without hesitation. The girl does not understand what he is talking about and asks if he meant something else. The young gentleman objects and explains that he really does want to stay with her. Then he says that he is afraid to be alone. Hardwin says he's embarrassed to admit it, but he spent every night with his sister during a thunderstorm. The girl tells him not to worry, since they've slept in the same bed many times. The guy hugs the girl and says that she looks like that, and he is pleased to see her smiling. The young gentleman recalls that once in his childhood, there was a terrible thunderstorm, and on that day he ran into the room to his sister, who was lying on the bed, and she could not wake up. And also, she did not come to her senses for a long time, although in the end, she still opened her eyes. Hardwin says he has been afraid of thunder ever since, and when he hears the sound, he feels the fear and sadness he felt that day, and he is overwhelmed with emotion, and that is why he could not sleep alone. The guy says that at some point, he decided that there was no point in hiding it anymore. However, he hopes to overcome his fear because he is not sure that he will be able to find someone who will be with him during the thunder. Hearing this, the main character asks if he trusts her. He replies that if he didn't, he would have already asked her to leave. Hardwin hugs the girl and says that there is no point in him being afraid of thunder anymore. She asks in surprise why his hands are shaking then, and at that moment she thought that there is no point in being afraid, and he means that Hannah is already dead, and now there is no need to be afraid that she will not wake up. The girl says that she will be with him, and therefore suggests that he should not be afraid. And then she suggests that they go to bed since it is late. The young gentleman lying in bed says that he now smells her next to him, not Hannah's. She asks if he doesn't like it. The guy says he's just wondering how much time has passed since then. Ellie replies that it will soon be a year. He says that he wants to ask her something and asks if she had other clients. The girl replies that there was another person and then apologizes for not telling her about it earlier. The main character asks if he knows Hayden Hills. Hearing this, the guy asks in surprise if he was also her client. Ellie says that, who knows, and thinks that maybe they will see him tomorrow. And then says that if they run into each other, she will pretend that they don't know each other. At this time, the main character looked at the guy and thought that he was disappointed in her, and she wonders why she always disappoints Hardwin. The young gentleman looks at the girl and claims that he is not disappointed in her, and therefore suggests that she stop making such a face, and says that if she is truly sorry, then she should take his hand. Ellie took the boy's hand, which was shaking at the time. He says he's glad she told him because he thinks she could have just kept it a secret. Hardwin states that it is important to him that she remains safe while she holds the title of Countess. He also simply wants her to be happy and asks if he can wish for that. The girl says that she also wants him to be happy and holds his hand, and then claims that she will not reveal her identity to Hayden. The young master claims that she is becoming wiser and wiser every day. The main character suggests that he trust her because she will try her best. He claims that he has trusted her for a long time. The next morning, the young gentleman asks Ellie if she is ready. And when he saw the girl, he was amazed by her beauty. Ellie tells the guy that he looks great and understands that today is such an important event, and that's why he tried. The main character says that it is better to hurry because you don't want them to be late. The girl looked at the guy and asked why he was like this. She also wondered if his knees still hurt. He assured her that everything was fine and asked her to hurry up. Hardwin tells the girl that it's hard to take his eyes off her. She asks if she can do it. He says that she can and he'll be there to support her, and so he suggests that she act like normal and talk to him and smile. Ellie asks if that means looking only at him. He says yes. And at that moment, the main character thought that if she was with Harvin, everything would be fine. The young gentleman says that Hannah's smile gestures and gait must all be remembered and repeated exactly. And at that moment, he wondered if his sister was watching them. And then he says that if she was watching, then please let her support them. When they arrived, the girl was surprised because she saw a lot of people. Hardwin asks Hannah if she will dance with him when the new song comes on. He then hands her a glass of wine to sip. Ellie thought that she didn't see Lennon among the people, but she thought that it seemed like he was somewhere nearby. And since this banquet was held by the Imperial Palace, it would be strange to meet knights like Labrador there. Suddenly, the main character saw Hayden. He comes to the girl and says that his name is Hayden Hills, and he claims that it is a great honor for him to meet her. The main character says that it is nice to meet you and to tell you her name is Hannah Fevre. At this time, their brother comes up to them and says that his name is Hardwin Fevre. Hayden says he is honored to meet them because he wanted to see the Countess, who refused to be engaged to his older brother. He then says she is very beautiful. Hearing this, the girl thanked the gentleman, and at that time she thought that she did not understand why she was worried. And then she said that they were leaving. Suddenly, Lennon comes up to them and says that he sees a lot of familiar faces, and he is especially happy to meet Hannah. The girl says that she is also glad to meet him, and at that moment, she thought that he simply could not help but come. The gentleman with scarlet eyes asks how she is feeling. She replies that everything is still not good and suggests not to worry. Lennon says he's sorry to hear that, then asks if she's thought about what he told her last time. The young gentleman reminds her that the woman he is looking for has silver hair, and about a month ago, an eyewitness saw two women with similar hair color getting into a carriage, and then he asks if she is interested in the results. Hearing this, the main character wondered if he was going to discuss it right here, and then she says that she was so busy that she completely forgot about it and apologizes. Lennon asks if this is true, and also wonders what kind of bad luck this is. At this time, Ellie thought that she had nothing to breathe, and then she apologized and left. Hardwin asks where she is going. The girl replies that she is going to freshen up. The brother asks if he should go with her. She replies that she does not need to since she is not a child. The main character went out into the corridor and thought that when there is no one around, it is easier to breathe. But suddenly she heard footsteps and thought that she did not even feel that someone was following her. Ellie quickly started walking, and at that moment she thought that she was being followed. And when the girl turned around, she saw Lennon. The young gentleman grabs the girl by the hand and then presses her against the wall. He asks her if she is interested in the story of the carriage. The main character explains that she said that she had no time for this. He reports that the carriage was heading to the mansion of Countess Fevre. Hearing this, the girl thought that she shouldn't panic, since Lennon doesn't know what happened in the mansion anyway. And then she asks the guy if he wants her to be the one he's looking for. He says that the young lady says that she is very sorry to upset him, but she is not that person. Hearing this, Lennon claims that he knows she is doing this for him, and then he says that he does not care at all, that he is still young to accept the title. And if she wants to help him become an earl, then let her help him. Hannah a secret, then he won't ask any unnecessary questions. Hearing this, the main character thought that he knew the truth, and therefore would clearly want to completely control her, making her his doll. Lennon says he just wants to see her and talk to her. She says it's rude and suggests he let her go. The young gentleman says that she can play the role of the Countess until the end, and he will watch Ellie, says that if he wants her to become that person for him, then she can. Lennon objects and explains that he is not looking for a replacement, as he only wants Ellie. Hearing this, the girl began to wonder if he really loves her. The main character thought that she was the most ordinary and commoner, and Lenin had met countless beautiful and elegant aristocrats on his way. And she does not understand why he cannot let her go. The girl thinks that she is not as good as those noble women, and she wonders why he does not leave her. Lenin touched the girl's hand and said that she was shaking, and said that if she wasn't afraid that he would understand who she really was, and suggested that she not bury herself in lies, and then he left. At this time, the main character thought that she should run and throw all unnecessary thoughts out of her head. And then she runs up to Lenin and thinks that she should go to the end. The girl tells the guy not to get bogged down in lies and grabs his hand. She reminds him that he lied about feeling sad because of that woman named Ellie, and then she tells him that he is actually in love with her. Hearing this, Lenin was surprised, and the young lady continues to say that if he wants the girl, he loves to be happy, then he should respect her choice, and therefore he suggests that he stop chasing after the fact that she left him without saying a word. The main character asks him if he thinks it's ugly, and then asks him not to be so rude to her again, because this is her last warning. When the girl returned to the hall, the young gentleman Fevre asked why she was gone for so long. She explained that she got a little lost and asked if he was worried about her. Hardwin says that if she didn't know he would be worried, then she shouldn't have provoked him, and then hugs the girl, and says that if she had stayed just one more minute, he would have gone looking for her. The brother explains that after she left, all the Hills brothers disappeared, and so he wondered if they had gone after her. Hearing this, the main character smiled and thought that she would need to tell him later about her meeting with Len. And she tells him not to worry because she thinks the main thing is that she came back and everything is fine. The young gentleman looked at her and said that she was being disingenuous. The girl explained that perhaps this was her talent. Hearing this, the guy smiled. Ellie looked into the hall and saw girls who couldn't take their eyes off the Hardwin. About Hardwin in society. That Hannah's younger brother was not at all interested in the social world, that he was ugly or crippled. And there were many such rumors. Ellie realizes that Hardwin has shown himself to be a very cool guy. He asks the girl if she will dance with him. She agrees. The main character tells the guy that she always feels so comfortable talking to him, and at that time she thought that when they are together, she can act funny. Although she understands that yesterday she made a lot of mistakes, and now she should not think about it because she thinks that she just needs to try. After the dance, the girl turns to her brother and says that they did it. He says that she did a great job and thinks that it should be, and now she is very happy to see it. After the ball, the young people were returning home and saw a very beautiful sunset. Hardwin asks the girl how she felt today, and he asks if it was hard for her. Ellie says she would be lying if she said it was easy. The young master asks if she regrets agreeing to their request. Hearing this, the main character is surprised and asks if he thinks she regrets it. He replies that he doesn't. The lady says that he is a good man and suggests not to even start. Hardwin claims she will never regret it. She asks him how he can be so sure. He explains that he will try to prevent that from happening. Ellie asks the guy why he is so kind to her, and she wonders if he feels sorry for her, or if it's because she agreed to help him. The young gentleman replies that it is both, and there are other reasons, and therefore he cannot see anything specific and acts as his heart tells him. Hardwin reports that he wanted to show his attention to someone. Suddenly, the main character doesn't understand why they are dancing, and with Lenin, she understands that they are not just dancing, but he is leading her in the dance. And he says that his feelings were a lie. At this time, the main character does not understand why she does not want to run away from there, and she feels that she does not want to leave him. Lenin says that if he said it was love and asks what she would do, then, suddenly, the girl heard a voice, which called her name. And when she opened her eyes, she saw that Hardwin was telling them that they had already arrived. Ellie realized that it was a dream. The young gentleman asks if she is okay, because he sees that she looks tired. The main character answers that everything is fine, and at that time she thought that if it is true that Lenin loves her and does not understand whether she should love him too. The main character believes that Lenin has always been good, and at least for her, he has never harmed her, but she understands that she is not obliged to accept his love. Ellie tells the guy that when she left, Lenin followed her. He said that he found the carriage that he and Hannah left in, and that he doesn't care that she's not the real Hannah, and all he wants is her. The young lady says that he also said that he would help them. Then she asks what Hardwin thinks about that. The young gentleman says that his opinion has not changed, and he does not trust him. Then he asks if she wants to ask him for help. The girl replies that she is not sure, but does not want to do something that he does not like. Hearing this, the guy says that he is pleased. Madeline tells Hardwin that a letter has arrived. The young lady asks who sent it. He replies that it was his uncle. The main character asks if the uncle is the one who needs the title of Count. The guy says that he wrote that he would drop by for a while, but he didn't mention the purpose, and at that moment, he thought that he clearly decided to visit them for a reason. The girl thought that Lennon could have sent him, and then she thought that he couldn't have stooped that low. Hardwin suggests that Ellie practice Hannah's arrogance. He says that his sister was very rude to their uncle, and as a brother, it was very embarrassing for him. Ellie says she doesn't even know if she can do it. And at that moment, she wondered if she could copy Hannah's behavior well. The young gentleman tells the girl to try to talk to him arrogantly, and therefore she should not introduce the uncle, but simply speak. The girl says she wants him to be rougher. Then she asks him how he likes it, because she thinks she did a good job. Hardwin asks if she wanted him to be ruder, and then he makes a sad face. The girl looks at the guy and then objects and says that it's a misunderstanding, and she will never say that again. And she starts crying. The guy apologizes and explains that he was joking, and claims that he will not joke like that again, and promises that he will never be rude to her. The young lady asks if he is making fun of her again. He objects and says he will think about it. At this time, Lennon is lying in bed and again remembers Ellie, whom he dreamed of. He understands that he sees this dream every night since Ellie disappeared, and he does not know why he dreams of him all the time, and he would like to get rid of it, but does not know how. The young gentleman thought that sleep would leave him if Ellie returned to him, and he recalled Hannah's words that he was in love with her. Lennon thought that despite the fact that he considers her different from everyone else and sees her every night in his dreams, his heartbeat accelerates when he looks at her. The young gentleman wonders if these could be called symptoms of love, and he has never thought of it that way. But whatever the case, he is certain that Hannah Fevre is Ellie. The Duke realizes that she confused him at their first meeting because she didn't act like Ellie at all. When Lennon learned about his brother and sister, he found out that they had a cousin named Baltan Royman, nicknamed the Fallen Baron. And so it was not difficult to obtain information. The Baron said that Hannah had suffered from a serious illness since childhood. It was a genetic illness, which also caused the death of the previous Count Fevre. Because the Fevre brother and sister lost their parents early, everyone began to persecute them in order to obtain the title of Count. Therefore, Hannah and Hardwin became very close. Hearing this, the Duke thought that if it was a genetic disease, then Hannah knew she would die, and Hardwin could not receive the title of Earl since he was still very young, and Hannah did not want to give the title to cousins whom she did not trust. The young master ponders that Ellie most likely ran away because of her father, and Hannah took her in because she needed some shelter. As a result, Ellie became the heir to the title of Countess until Hardwin comes of age. Lennon thought about how he didn't care what the reason was. What mattered was that Ellie dumped him, and she pretended to be with Hannah and fooled him, but he thought it was all useless because that boy gave her away. The young gentleman realizes that he does not look at his sisters with such a look, and at that moment he thought that only she can smile like that when he sees her smile. Gareth reflects on how he wants to have her more and more, and he also wants to lock her in his little cage so that only he can watch her. The Baron came to the Duke and said that he was pleased to meet him. The young gentleman explained that he invited him to find out more about Countess Fevre. Baltan asks if he can also ask why he is so interested in the Countess. He says he will not hide it and tells her that he is in love with her. But she has refused his engagement, and it seems that she is not satisfied with the fact that he is Lennon Hills. The young gentleman explains that he therefore decided to find out more about her, as he believes that he can find a way to please the Countess. The Baron listened to the gentleman said that he was sincere in his feelings, and he did not understand how she could reject him. Lennon says that in any case, in exchange for some useful information, he will help to restore his reputation. And at this time, he thought about what is not guaranteed. Until he inherits the title of Duke, his hands are tied. Boltan Raymond says he is ready to tell him everything he knows. After some time, the young gentleman thought that he had not said anything interesting, and he asked if Countess Hannah was suffering from some kind of bronchial disease. The Baron says that he cannot give a precise answer here, and therefore asks for forgiveness. And he remembers that he has never seen Hannah cough, and then he says that this is all he knows, and asks if he could help him with anything. The Duke says he has one more request, and he wants him to come to Countess Fevre in person and tell her that he doubts that she is a real countess. Hearing this, the Baron asks in surprise whether another person is replacing Hannah. He replies that he cannot say for sure, but he would like to verify this information. And then he says that if he interferes where he is not asked, he will take everything he has. Lennon says that if he doesn't want to do this, then just let him do what he tells him. The Baron says that he understood him, and at that time thought that this gentleman is not one of those who will throw words to the wind, and therefore he must be listened to and do as he wants, because in this way he will be able to return his lost titles and wealth. Boltan Raymond says he's going to see the Countess tomorrow. Then he asks Lennon if that's hibiscus tea. The young gentleman asks if he liked the tea. The Baron says that it is not that, but simply that Hannah was allergic to hibiscus. Boltan says that he used to go to the Countess often. One day he brought with him some hibiscus, and as soon as she drank it, a rash appeared on her face, and it seems that she herself did not know that she was allergic to hibiscus. Lennon says that it is clear to him, and that means that the girl he likes has such a terrible allergy. He smiles and asks if Hardwin knows about it. He says that he is not sure because the young master was studying at the academy at the time. The Duke asks if there were any witnesses to this that day. The Baron says that several of Hannah's personal servants were present. At this time, the young gentleman thought that Hardwin might not know about this, but there is a witness, and he thinks that a very interesting picture awaits them. The next day, the knight turns to the captain and asks him what he has been thinking about these past few days. He then claims that he has been daydreaming. The Labrador objects and says that this is not true, and explains that no matter how detached he is, no one can even touch him with a sword. The knight says that he is simply worried about him. He replies that there is no need, and then leaves. At this time, the Labrador does not understand how he is supposed to find out information about Lennon, because he believes that he is not the type to show others his weaknesses. The guy reflects on the fact that no matter how hard he tries, he still can't find out anything about Lennon. A Labrador lost in his thoughts met a girl and during this meeting pushed her. He apologizes and she says that it's nothing serious. The guy thought that he was seeing this girl for the first time and thought that she was his new passion Lennon. He thought she was strange because she reminded him of Ellie. On the way, he met a man whom he saw for the first time, and when he went into Lennon's office, he asked if he had any guests and wondered if he had arrived at the wrong time. Labrador. Notice that the gentleman has been drinking this red tea very often lately, and he can't remember what it's called. At this time, Hardwin thought about how he had lost his parents early, and recently he had lost Hannah. And that was why he felt very unhappy. But his heart was touched by Ellie, who reminded him so much of Hannah. The young master at first just sympathized with her, and wanted to take care of her when he learned that she ran away from home because she was being bullied there. But one day when he woke up, he saw that Ellie was comforting him. The guy reflects on the fact that it was the first time he leaned on someone other than Hannah, and then he realized that he could trust her. And he wonders how long it will take for them to be able to fully trust each other. Hardwin remembers that Ellie didn't answer that question at the time, and at that moment, he thought that he trusted her completely, but he didn't want to admit it to Ellie because he was afraid that she wasn't ready to trust him yet. Knife thinks that he will definitely ask her later. Lying in bed, the young gentleman can't fall asleep, and he thinks about the fact that his uncle never came here for no reason before, and he understands that he wouldn't have come here without any reason. And he also wonders what his uncle has planned. The guy went out onto the balcony and looked at the stars and wondered if they could handle all this. Hardwin saw a girl sitting on the bench. Then he took a blanket and came to her. The young gentleman asks the lady what she is doing there, since it is cold outside and she is naked. The young lady explains that she couldn't sleep and asks why he came here. He replies that he wanted to get some air on the balcony, and when he noticed her, he decided to join in. The guy tells her to put a blanket over herself because arrogant Hannah shouldn't catch a cold. The girl says that since he has come, let him sit down. He agrees. Ellie says that she thinks about Hannah more than usual today, and thinks it's so strange because they only spent a short time together, and she remembers everything down to the smallest detail. Hearing this, Hardwin asks if she misses Hannah. The girl replies that she misses him. He says that he does too. Ellie asks if they will visit her later, as she thinks they should tell Hannah that everything is fine here. The main character asks the guy why he so rarely says what he really feels, and at that moment, she thought that this was just too direct a question. Hardwin says she can be honest with him, but not with anyone else, and explains that they might misunderstand her, and not all people are good, and she should be able to hide her feelings sometimes. The guy says he hopes she doesn't get into an unpleasant situation. The girl doesn't understand why she can only be honest with him and asks about it. He explains that she can trust him more than anyone else. Hearing this, the main character smiled and agreed with him, and then she said that she trusted him more than anyone else. Ellie tells the guy that he is very sweet, and at times like this, she is glad that she has a friend. The girl saw that the guy's face had changed, and she asks what's wrong, and wonders if he doesn't like the fact that she considers him her friend. She says that it seems that he prefers to consider them accomplices. Hardwin explains that he just wants to be with her. The lady is surprised to hear this and asks what he said. The guy says nothing. The girl asks what he means by wanting to be with her. The young gentleman explains that she is so sincere, but sometimes she does not understand obvious things, and he cannot even be angry with her because of this. The young lady says that she cannot be angry with him either. The young gentleman tells the girl to go into the house already because he doesn't want her to get sick. The girl asks if it's okay if they don't sleep together tonight. Hearing this, he suggests that she not make fun of him. The next day, the young people played checks and the guy won. And then he suggests that the girl get ready for a flick. Hearing this, the young lady asks if he will beat her again and says that it hurts. The guy says that today they will do without punishment. Then he gives her his jacket to put on because he thinks that she might freeze. At this point, the main character doesn't understand what's wrong with her dress. Then she turns to Hardwin and asks why his nose started bleeding. The guy explains that he must be tired, and that's why he tells her not to think that dirty thoughts are to blame. He claims that he's just overworked. The maid informs that Baron Baltan has arrived. The young master asks the girl if she is ready. At this time, the main character thought that everything would be fine, and then informs that she should come in because she is not alone. Hardwin turns to his uncle and asks how he's doing. Then he says that frankly, they didn't expect him to show up so suddenly. The Baron replies that he is not doing well. When Ellie looked at him, she thought that his gaze reminded her of her father. I think she needs to pull herself together and keep her face. The young girl says she is glad to hear it. The uncle says she is still the same, and he does not understand how she can talk to him like that. And he remembers that the last time they met, she looked plumper. The girl says that ever since they received the letter about his arrival, she has been unable to swallow a single morsel. And then she claims that she has not forgotten how he wanted to take their title of count for himself. The Baron says that they were still young at the time, so he took over the family for a while. Then he claims that he thought they had cleared up the misunderstanding long ago. The young lady says she really wants to believe that it was just a misunderstanding. And at that moment, she thought that she was worried that she wouldn't be able to be cheeky, but it turned out to be much easier. The Baron informs that in any case, he has brought a gift with him in honor of his long absence and offers to bring it. Hearing this, the maid was surprised because she did not understand whether he looked like a man who gives gifts. The uncle says that he has brought tea leaves that are hard to find in this area. Then he suggests that the girl not look at him, but rather try the tea. Ellie wondered if he put poison in it. Hardwin said it was hibiscus. Then he asked if he put anything in the tea. The Baron says that it is rude to talk to him like that, and then asks why he would put something in there, and says that if they don't believe him, then he can try first. When the man has drunk a cup of tea, he asks if they are sure, and then explains that it is just ordinary tea, and asks the girl if she knows what it is made of. The young lady wonders if this is hibiscus tea. The uncle says that means she remembers. Hearing this, the main character thought that she and Hannah had already drunk this tea once, and at that time, she thought that she should drink it. Ellie drank the tea and thanks her uncle for the gift, and then she says that it is so fragrant. Seeing this, the uncle asks who she is, And then he tells her that the Hanu he knew was allergic to hibiscus. And then screaming, he says that nothing happened to her, and he doesn't understand why. Hardwin asks what he is talking about, and states that this is the first time he has heard that Hannah was allergic to him. The uncle claims that this is true, and when he was at the academy, he drank tea with Hannah, and personally saw her break out in a rash. And his words can be confirmed by the servant and the doctor who treated the girl at the time. At this point, the main character thought that he had revealed them. The brother asks the uncle why he then offered Hannah to drink this tea, knowing that she was allergic. He replies that he thought Hannah would not drink it when she found out that there was hibiscus in it. Ellie thought that they really were caught, and she didn't know what to do, and thought maybe she should tell them that she didn't have allergies anymore. She wondered what Hannah would do in her place now. Lennon says he came without permission because it was too loud and asks what happened. Seeing him, the main character does not understand what this young duke is doing here. The countess's room without permission. He says he is a duke and asks who he is. The man says he is their uncle Balton Raymond. Then he says they are having a confidential conversation and asks if he could come by later. The duke asks if he is the odd one out. Then he goes to Countess Hannah and says she smells delicious and wonders if it is the scent of hibiscus tea. Lennon asks if she can finally drink this tea, and he claims that he is very happy for her. He says that he remembers how she told him that she dreamed of drinking this tea, but she could not because she was allergic to hibiscus. The Duke says that after which he gave her allergy medicine and asks if she really remembers. The young gentleman recalls that she then smiled at him and said that she would marry him if it was effective. Hearing this, Ellie understood what Lennon was trying to achieve, and she believes that he is helping her for only one purpose, to then insist on marriage. The Duke touches the lady's hands and says that he hopes she has not forgotten her promise, and asks if she sees herself marrying him now. The main character thinks that it is better to play along with the Duke for now. She says that his medicine worked, but the trembling in her hands still remains. Lennon says that he will then try to find an effective medicine. He turns to the Baron and asks if he is still superfluous here. The Duke says that if Balton bothers Hannah again, then he will take it personally. Lennon grabs the girl's hand and asks her to go. At this time, Hardwin grabs the girl's other hand and asks her not to go. At this time, the main character thought that if she didn't go with Lennon now, she was afraid to even imagine what he could do to her. Ellie tells her brother that she thinks it would be better for him to stay here and solve all the problems. The Duke turns to the girl and tells her that he wanted to help her. Hearing this, she thanks him for his help, and at that moment, she thought that he seemed suspicious to her. The main character ponders what to actually do in the spirit of Lennon, and he is after all the heir to the Hills family. Ellie knows he seems sincere, and that's why she's not sure about anything. He tells her he didn't do it out of the kindness of his heart. Then he asks her if she remembers what he said a minute ago. At this time, the main character thought that she did not want to answer, and then she asks why he suddenly decided to come to them. Lennon explains that he wanted to respond to the words she said to him in the banquet hall, and when he arrived, the servant said that she was in the drawing room. The young gentleman explains that he then heard strange sounds and went in without thinking, and because he realized that the woman he was very interested in was in trouble and thought that she needed his help. The Count says that some man doubted that she was a countess, and he says that he saw her trembling at that moment, and so he just couldn't leave it as it was. Lennon claims he felt he had to save her. Ellie says he's quite an insightful person. Then she asks why he speaks informally to her. The young gentleman says that the fact that she is not allergic to hibiscus was proof that she is Ellie. Then he asks how much longer she was going to deceive him. The Count asks how long she intends to help that child, and he says that if she had told him everything at once, nothing bad would have happened. Lennon says she told him he was obsessed with her because he was in love. But if he saw love as a desire to keep his beloved close, and then asks if she would be with him, the girl pushes him away and says she doesn't know. And at that moment, she thought that she doesn't know what to do and how to refuse him correctly. The Duke says that everything is fine and therefore she may not answer. However, she must know that he is ready to do everything for her, and in return, she must look only at him and obey him too. He believes that in this way, they will always be happy. Hearing this, the main character remembered her father about how he said that she does not need to speak, but just listen to others, and she does not understand how he could tell her such a thing. Ellie thought about how he wanted her to live her life the way she wanted, and she didn't understand why he was trying to control her now, and she wondered if he really loved her or if he just wanted her to love him. The young lady offers to give her time to think. He asks how much time she needs. He also asks until that child takes the title of Earl. Lennon says that he is not prepared to wait that long. The Duke asks the girl if they can see each other tomorrow. He also wants them to see each other more often and spend time together. The girl agrees and says that she will come to him tomorrow, and today he should return home. Hearing this, the young gentleman thought that this was very right, and he was already looking forward to tomorrow. And he said that he would make her some hibiscus tea, because he thought that it would really make her allergic to it. When the main character entered the house, she thought that she was very tired. Madeline asks the lady if everything is okay. She also asks if she is cold. The lady answers that everything is okay. Ellie asks where Hardwin and Uncle are. The maid replies that they have gone, and then suggests to the lady that she sit down and drink some tea since she has just made a new one, since she thinks that this will warm her up and make her feel better. Madeline says that Ellie must have been very scared, and then she tells us that she really didn't know that the Countess had an allergy either, even though she's been working here for a long time. And so she thinks that after that incident, Countess Hannah must have simply gotten rid of the hibiscus without question. The maid suggests that the mistress not blame herself, as she believes that perhaps this was a test that she needed to pass.